Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the January 19th, 2010 meeting of the Los Gatos Town Council. This would be an excellent time for you to turn off your phones or to put them on to vibrate. And I'd like to ask for the roll call, please.
Councilmember Mike Wasserman.
Here.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Vice Mayor Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Diane McNutt.
Here. Each week at our council meeting, we have what we call a Future Leaders Program, where we invite a young person from our community who has great potential to come and to help us do the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening we have with us Chris Malmborg, who is an 8th grader at Hillbrook School. Before I have him come up, I want to tell you a little bit about Chris. He is co-head of the student government at Hillbrook, and he was elected there by his peers. He's volunteered at the San Jose Blind Center, serving lunch and helping in the ceramics studio. He's volunteered at the San Juan Bautista Child Development Center, where he served as an older buddy. He plays lacrosse for West Valley Redhawks. He plays baseball for American Game Hornets, and he enjoys biking, surfing, and learning. And tonight he's going to help us do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all please stand, and Chris, please come forward.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wait. And we have a little gift for you, and I think the council members would like to shake your hands. Also this evening, one of the privileges of being in the center seat for a year as mayor is that you have opportunities to make proclamations. And so tonight I am going to issue a proclamation, and I'd like to read it to you, give you a little bit of information before I call up a representative of American Red Cross to tell us all how we can get more involved. So, whereas there is a need to ensure an adequate blood supply and to stress the importance of giving the gift of life through the donation of blood, and whereas the American Red Cross Northern California Blood Services region distributes more than 130,000 pints of blood per year to help save local patients, yet fewer than 100,000 pints of blood are collected in the region annually. So there's a gap there. Whereas some 38% of the public is eligible to donate, yet fewer than 8% of these individuals present to donate blood. And where there is a need for additional healthy, regular volunteer donors to join the ranks of those who already give of themselves so generously. And whereas organizations in Los Gatos sponsored 15 blood drives in 2009, producing 647,000 pints of blood. One donation can help save the lives of up to 3 people. That means as many as 1,941 people may have been helped through this life-saving act. And whereas every day blood is needed in hospitals and emergency treatment facilities for patients with cancer and other diseases, for organ transplant recipients, and to help save the lives of accident victims. And whereas there is a need for civic and service organizations and businesses to sponsor blood drives. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Diane McNutt, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the month of January 2010 as National Blood Donor Month within our town, and urge all citizens to pay tribute to those among us who donate for others in need. I urge citizens in good health to donate regularly. I also urge all civic and service organizations and businesses, if they have not already done so, to form blood donor groups to provide blood for others. And I'd like to call forward Gail Roner of the American Red Cross, Donor Recruitment Account Manager, who handles things in Los Gatos, to tell us a little bit more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Gail with the American Red Cross, and I would like to thank the members of the Los Gatos area for all their participation and support in blood collections. We seem to be growing the collections in Los Gatos each year, and as the mayor said, this year we did collect 647 pints in Los Gatos. We have 2 blood drives a year with the high school, and then various churches and community organizations seem to step up every year to help us further the collections. I also just wanted to give you a little bit of information about the earthquake in Haiti, that the American Red Cross has sent more than 100 units of blood and blood products to Haiti to support the blood needs there. And there are no more blood requests at this point. So that's an update on the blood services side. The chapter side, of course, is very different, and they always continue to accept donations to help out there. So again, I'd like to thank all the people in Los Gatos for continuing to help with blood support products. Thank you.
This is a good opportunity. Thank you very much. And thank you for applauding so heartily. It's a good opportunity for us all to recognize the work American Red Cross does, both locally, nationally, and internationally. We're moving along quite quickly this evening because we have a very heavy agenda with a lot of serious work to do, so we want to get right down to it. Closed session report, Mr. Martello?
I do not believe there is a closed session report this evening. The council did meet as noticed on the agenda.
Thank you. Council matters. Does the council have anything that matters? Seeing none, we'll move to manager matters.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, 2 items we wanted to report on. First, we've survived the first 2 waves of the storm that will continue for another week or more. Today, we suffered some minor tree downs and some minor mudslides. We've largely recovered from that. All roads are passable. We're prepared for the next bigger storm that's coming in late tonight or in tomorrow morning. If any residents suffer any impacts in terms of trees down, blocked roadways, mudslides, they should call our Public Works service line, 399-5770. For any life-threatening emergency, obviously call 911. For any life safety issue or traffic issue, that's a public danger. Our focus has been on safety at this point in time. Cleanup from the debris will occur once the storms have subsided in a week. We are keeping our parks closed this week for both public safety purposes as well as to free up staff to focus on keeping our roadways open and operating. And as we announced in December, sandbags for businesses and residents suffering from potential flooding are available at the Miles Street courtyard next to Balzer Field. On to the second item. Today marked the culmination of months of leadership and efforts by Officer Leo Coddington, working with Parks and Public Works, the Community Development Department, and Community Services to do homeless outreach. And through their efforts, we've identified 30 to 40 recurring homeless individuals in our community and are connecting them with housing, medical, and social services, as well as legal resources. And in particular, we wanted to thank St. Luke's and all the nonprofits who made themselves available from 10 to 2 today to provide services to about 20 to 30 members of our homeless population. So that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Did you want to introduce the Did You Know segment?
Sure. This is a new segment that the mayor has started that I'll remember to roll right to it at one of the future meetings. It's my pleasure to introduce Captain Elena Forrest, who is going to present Operation CARE.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. I wanted to talk about Operation CARE tonight. This program we've been doing for several years, probably 15 to 20 years. This is a senior welfare check that we do every day, 365 days a year. So we call residents that have applied with our program. We call them every day. A dispatcher picks up the phone and actually calls a person every day to check on their welfare. For more information about this, you can go to our website, lgmspd.org. It's under Services and Outreach, and then it's called Senior Wellness Check. and then our contact person, Gwen Cross, at that number there. And I do want to mention that we have about 11 seniors that we call every day, which in a community this big is really a small number. So if you have anybody that you think could use a phone call every day to check up on them, please give us a call or go on our website. And we have had success with this program. In the last 5 years, we have actually saved 4 lives of the seniors who couldn't pick up the phone and were injured, and we were able to send officers and save their life. So this is a really valuable program, and I really encourage anybody who has a senior to sign up with our program.
Thank you, Captain Forrest. It sounds like it's the kind of program that would be a benefit to anyone who lives alone, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else, Mr. Larson? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next we have consent. We have quite a few items on consent. Mr. Larson, you want to make a comment on items 1 and 2, I believe?
Staff would recommend continuance of items 1 and 2. The first item is to refer the matter or a portion of the matter to the policy committee for review that affects the mayor and council, and then to bring it forward as a complete package at a future meeting. The second item on the agenda, we'd like to request a continuance to your February 1st meeting to allow the nonprofit organization, A Place for Teens, to submit some additional ideas that they've come up with on how the matching funds could be used since our tentative agreement last fall.
Thank you. Council, do you wish to pull any other items off of consent? Public, I have no cards. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to pull an item off of consent? Seeing none, is there a motion? Mr. Brzezinski?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to approve items 3 through 9 of the consent calendar and continue items 1 and 2 to a later date.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move to verbal communication. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public to address the council on an item, subject matter not on tonight's agenda. I have no cards, but if anybody would like to take advantage of that opportunity, this is the time. And seeing none, we'll move right into public hearings. The first is item number 10 on public hearings. This is to adopt a resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous vegetation, in this particular case, weeds. And we have no desk items on this as far as I know. Staff report by Todd Capurso, Director of Parks and Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor. One additional impact from all these current storms and the rain will no doubt be a bumper crop of weeds this year. So in anticipation of that, we're proceeding through the public process of the hazardous vegetation ordinance. This is an annual program that we conduct in conjunction with the County of Santa Clara. The town contracts with the county for the inspection and compliance with regard to weed removal on private property. The county performs the inspections in the springtime, and for property owners that do not comply or have not complied voluntarily, the county then performs the removal on such properties and bills the property owner as appropriate. At the conclusion of the public hearing, we are looking for the council to adopt the resolution ordering the abatement of said hazardous vegetation. That concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. I have no cards. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and look to council for a motion. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution ordering the abatement of hazardous vegetation.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Moving right along. Public hearing item number 11. This is to adopt a resolution or resolutions regarding the California First program. We have no desk items as far as I know. Staff report by Regina Faulkner, Community Services Director.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Part of the town's sustainability strategy is to participate in appropriate regional resource and energy conservation programs when feasible. Program administration and implementation on just a local level is often cost prohibitive without the economies of scale offered by regional efforts. The California First program presented for your consideration this evening is a cost-effective program offered through a collaborative effort involving Santa Clara County and approximately 13 counties. The program is based on successful projects implemented in other jurisdictions and provides a great opportunity for the town to assist residents by offering them the option of financing energy and water reduction retrofits as well as solar panel installations through property tax assessments. The collaborative will be seeking grant funds to offset the costs of establishing and marketing the bond-financed program. If grant funds are not received, the town would pay a one-time setup cost of $12,250. There are no other risks to the town, as the town would be under no obligation to repay the bonds issued for the program. Homeowners would be required to repay the costs of the property improvements over time through payment of property taxes. The county is seeking grant funding through ABAG to support a home energy audit and retrofit program, which will complement the California First program. In order to participate in the California First program presented this evening, the town must adopt the two resolutions you mentioned. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you for Ms. Faulkner. Also, I just wanted to reiterate for the public that should we go ahead and participate in this program, it says in the staff report that any jurisdiction may withdraw at any time from California First by passing a resolution, rescinding the resolution to join. So if somewhere down the road, for some reason it doesn't make sense for Los Gatos, we have that right. Yep, thank you.
Mr. Pazinski.
Ms. Faulkner, what is the criteria for SEP 1 to approve our being funded for this program? Understanding that it's $12,500 that we would pay if we aren't granted that approval, what would be the criteria and what would be our eligibility?
The Santa Clara County, along with the collaborative, is collectively looking to apply for those SEP 1 dollars. So the town itself will not be going after the monies. The county and its collaborative partners feel confident that they will be successful in receiving most, if not all, of the grant funds that they are seeking.
But if we're not successful, we can still go forward at a cost of $12,500.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. I have one card, and if you want to speak on this item or any item that's coming up on the agenda, if you could fill out a card now and send it over here to the side, that would be good. We have Monique Jensen who wants to speak on this.
Hello, good evening, council members. My name is Monique Jensen. I'm at 104 Strathmore Place in Los Gatos. My husband and I, Mark and I, put solar panels on our house in 2008, and we've paid only an access fee to PG&E ever since for our electrical usage. And I'll talk to anybody about solar panels every day of the week, anybody who'll listen. And most are interested, but the problem everybody seems to come up with is that I don't have the upfront. So this is a very, very exciting program because it would allow people to finance these kinds of improvements and pay them back in the form of their property tax assessments. And then the other concern a lot of folks bring up is that, what if I sell my house? I'll never get this money back out. But this assessment, I understand, stays with the house. So this is an improvement, and we expect our solar panels to last 20 years plus. So I think it's fabulous the town is considering adopting California First, and I think it's a fantastic idea, and you have my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask the attorney if we have two resolutions before us. Do those need to be taken as separate items, or can they be joined together if council wants to go in that direction?
They can be taken together.
Thank you. Okay, council, questions, discussion, motions? Mrs. Spector.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. First of all, I think this California First program is fantastic. For those of you who have been following it, Berkeley has been doing this kind of thing. However, we needed legislation to do it in a general law city such as ours. And if you don't know what it's about, educate yourself if you want solar panels on your home. That being said, I'm going to move to adopt the resolution of the town of Los Gatos authorizing the town authorizing the town of Los Gatos to join the California First program as attachment 1 to our staff report, and also the resolution of the town council of the town of Los Gatos authorizing Sacramento County to submit a collaborative application on its behalf to the California Energy Commission for state energy program funds, which is attached as attachment 2 to our staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Passes unanimously, and we move on to item number 12, which may take a little bit longer. Item number 12 is to introduce an ordinance amending Articles 1 and 4 of Chapter 23 of Los Gatos Town Code to prohibit roadway solicitations. We will begin with a staff report by Sergeant Langer, and I'm laughing because his name tag is like in Braille. I can't even see it.
No,
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, community members. I'm here to introduce the ordinance amending the Los Gatos Town Code to prohibit roadway solicitations. A little background. Council had directed staff to study and present a report regarding the recent increase in public solicitation occurring on traffic islands in town. For approximately the past 6 months, a number of individuals have begun to solicit funds from traffic islands at major intersections in town. It's similar to behavior that which a number of other cities in the region have experienced. Residents and motorists have complained to the town staff about this new activity. Council has asked that the issue be brought forward for consideration of an ordinance to prohibit the activity. After looking into the matter, staff believe that a more specific public safety issue is present when this activity occurs immediately adjacent to moving traffic, which would support prohibition of the activity. Police have observed behavior of solicitors on traffic islands for several months. While there have not been any known collisions due to the interaction of the solicitor and a driver, police have seen numerous examples where cars nearly collided or traffic was clearly disrupted. We adopted an ordinance which is consistent with, we drafted an ordinance which is consistent with ordinances created in other cities around our area, which is prohibiting the activity. And also solicitation of drivers and vehicles traveling on a public roadway by a person on a roadway, including a traffic medium strip, we consider as a public safety hazard and should be prohibited.
That concludes staff report?
It does.
Okay. Council, any questions? Because I have a couple if you don't. Okay. I have two questions, and they both regard the wording of the proposed ordinance. I don't have the number right here. So it's on page 2 of that. And the easier one is on sub-item B. It currently says it shall be unlawful for any person to stand in the roadway and solicit, and there's previously a definition of roadway which includes median, and that's fine, or attempt to solicit from the occupants of any unparked vehicle. I'm not an attorney, but does it not also need to say sit or lie, so that if you go up to somebody and they're saying, but I'm sitting, and the ordinance says stand, that they can get around it that way?
That's a good point, and it was brought forward. What we decided that once the document has been drafted, that we would change the language, or once it's been considered, we'd change the language to cover any manner of occupying the median for solicitation purposes, just to cover that point.
Okay. And then my second question is on item A. Currently says it shall be unlawful for any person traveling in any unparked vehicle to solicit or attempt to solicit any person. So I have two questions or comments on that. The first is I'm not clear as to what behavior that's trying to address. And then secondly, again, if you refer back to the definitions that we have earlier about what is solicitation, which is any, it could even be a written offer of goods or services. So how would that not apply to the sign on a plumbing truck that says, if your drain's plugged, call Joe the plumber and a phone number? So I'm not sure what it's trying to get at and why it wouldn't apply to those kinds of routine solicitations of business in an unparked moving vehicle.
I might be able to suggest some clarifications to both that issue and the one you raised with item B, because in B there's actually two. The wonderful thing about regulating this area in our First Amendment and clarifications serve two purposes. One, it makes it easier and clearer to enforce, and two, it more closely follows First Amendment law, which says it has to be very clear before you interfere with somebody's activity. With respect to the answer to your question about what that's in there for, the idea is that somebody in a vehicle soliciting has to be, well, you have to treat the person wanting to stand on the median the same as somebody soliciting in a vehicle, but you're right, it could be a sign on the truck. So what I would propose for your consideration is three clarifying changes. And the second thing that was not clear in item B was, what does parked mean? Because it does it mean legally parked or illegally parked? So what I would propose to the council, in consideration of also what the sergeant just said, was, one, we put in the definition for parked vehicle shall mean a legally parked vehicle. That, to respond to the question you had about the plumbing sign, to add the following sentence to the definition of solicit or solicitation, which would say, this term shall not include the mere advertisement of goods and or services by a motorist where no media transaction is attempted. And then finally, in that section B, rather than go sit, stand, lie, which I think would solve the problem, you could also consider the wording, it shall be unlawful for any person while in the roadway to solicit or attempt to solicit from the occupants of any unparked vehicle. Because that's really what you're trying to get at. You're trying to get at anybody in the roadway doing it, so whether sit, stand, or lie. So with those changes, if this would move forward, your motion would just have to include the city attorney or town attorney's changes.
Okay, thank you. Council, any other questions? Okay, then I'll open it to the public, and we do have one card. Jim Zanardi.
Good evening. My name is Jim Zanardi. I live on South Kennedy in Los Gatos. I'm born and raised here, 60 years. I own the Los Gatos Shopping Center, and I'm representing my tenants tonight, which include Starbucks, Aldo's Deli, Old Republic, Studio Kicks, and Bianco. They've all had problems with the homeless in the area. And like you say, in the last 6 months, it's been really, really bad. I know Starbucks has come to me many a times. We know what we can do. They go in the bathroom, and I don't know if they're taking a bath or what they're doing in there, but they can't get them out. So now they've made a rule that they give them a free cup of coffee, and they only allow them so many minutes, and they have to leave the premises. Otherwise, they hang around and cause chaos with the other patrons. I know Aldo's Deli has had numerous problems with them under the stairs, sleeping. Studio Kicks, which has in the morning has a number of young women exercising, and during the afternoon and evenings they have young children doing karate, and they've called 911 many a times because they'll have one of them leering in the window, and the children get scared and the mothers get upset, and it gets pretty bad. My wife owns Bianco, which is a gift store in the center, and it's pretty bad when they call 911, that the 911 operators know my wife and her store manager by name, because she's had to call them so many times because they're screaming in the parking lot, or they come into the store and raise a ruckus of some kind. She's had clients that just 2 weeks ago, her daughter goes to St. Mary's school. She's in 3rd grade or 4th grade. She wanted to walk down to the shopping center to meet her mother, but her mother says, you can't do that because you go across the street, sometimes they get pretty rowdy. They get pretty aggressive sometimes. And I don't think that's, if they want to beg is one thing, but to get rowdy with the people is another thing. My wife has one woman that works three part-time jobs to support herself and help her grandmother and grandfather. And she's talked to them because she goes across the street there once in a while. And she came in one day and she said, I worked 3 jobs to try to make it. And this guy over here is telling me he's making $100 to $150 a day cash, and he's not paying any taxes. What am I doing? Maybe I should go stand in the corner. So it's getting pretty bad, and it's a long time coming to see the ordinance change, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zennari. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public portion. I will, before we get into council discussion, ask the clerk to read the title of the proposed ordinance, and we'll just get that out of the way.
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Articles 1 and 4 of Chapter 23 of the Los Gatos Code to prohibit roadway solicitations.
Thank you. And if I could have a motion from council to waive the reading of the text before we get into discussion?
So moved. Second.
And any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, so council, we've got the formalities out of the way. Discussion? Motion? Mr. Rice.
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for the work they put in on this, and also to recognize what this really is, which is it is a public safety issue. With that, I'm going to move that we introduce the ordinance that's attached as Attachment 1 with the changes made recommended by the town attorney.
Second.
Further discussion? Well, seeing none, we'll go ahead and have the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. And we'll direct the clerk administrator to publish the notice on that. Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 13. Let's see, what would that be about? We're considering an ordinance to change the zone from C1 to C1 PD to demolish an existing supermarket, Safeway, and to construct a new supermarket, Safeway, with underground parking. We do have some desk items that were given to us this evening. We will begin with a staff report. After the staff report, I'll ask council to do any disclosures they need to do. We will ask staff questions, and then we will open it up to the applicant to make a presentation, and then there'll be time for the rest of the public to comment. We'll close with the applicant and then have council discussion and decision. So, Ms. Savage, you're going to do it tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Let me see if I can get this to work. There you go. The site is located on the southeast corner of North Santa Cruz Avenue and Andrews Street. The site is over 2 acres in size and contains a 25,991 square foot supermarket. There is an alleyway located at the rear of the store. Sorry, I don't have a laser on this one, but the alleyway contains an easement that provides access to a town parking lot and neighboring commercial properties to the south of the subject site. The plan development application includes a zone change from C1 to C1PD, the demolition of the existing store, the construction of a new supermarket, and construction of an underground parking garage. The new supermarket will include an interior cafe kiosk, deli, and outdoor seating. There is also an option for an interior bank kiosk. These amenities are included as convenient services to the supermarket customers and are considered accessory to the supermarket use. The Conceptual Development Advisory Committee reviewed a preliminary proposal on January 14th, 2009. Technical reviews were completed and a mitigated negative declaration was prepared and circulated. The Planning Commission reviewed the project on December 9th, 2009. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the application with additional performance standards. These performance standards relate to the alleyway width, underground parking safety concerns, community benefit, bicycle parking, pedestrian access to commercial neighbors to the south, curb height, and the truck route and logistics plan. To address the Commission's first direction, staff explored 4 options as outlined in the staff report. These options include shifting the structure and the underground parking garage to the west, shifting the structure to the west without shifting the underground parking garage, reducing the reducing the structure footprint and the underground parking garage area, and reducing the structure footprint without a change to the underground parking garage. When considering an increased alley width, the council should consider the larger aisle widths offered by the applicant, potential tree impacts, and potential reductions to the front setback. The council should also consider if the increased alleyway width would promote drive-through traffic and whether an increase in drive-through traffic would be an adverse impact. The proposed 17-foot alleyway width meets the intent of the plan development application. Staff, including fire and engineering, find the proposed width acceptable. If the council finds merit for a wider alleyway, the council should amend performance standard number 6 as outlined in the staff report. The second recommended additional performance standard was to designate the eastern portion of the garage to employee parking. This could alleviate safety concerns for pedestrians traveling from the elevator at the west of the garage to the parking spaces at the eastern portion of the garage. Town code does not allow parking to be assigned unless there is excess parking. The applicant could encourage employees to park in the easternmost portion of the garage, but could not designate employee parking. Alternatively, the currently proposed pathway could be extended. The extension could be more narrow than the ADA pathway that's currently proposed. Town council should consider whether the project warrants an extension of the pedestrian pathway to the easternmost portion of the underground garage. An extension could require the reconfiguration of parking spaces and the nearby cart return area. A full discussion of community benefit is included in the Planning Commission staff report. In addition to the originally offered community benefit, the applicant addressed the eScript program during the Planning Commission hearing. The program provides a means for Safeway to contribute to local schools. The applicant explained that an awareness campaign educating schools about the eScript program could result in an increase of Safeway contributions. If the council supports Commission's recommendation regarding the eScript program, the council should include a new performance standard as outlined in the staff report. The applicant is required to contribute their fair costs to upgrade the traffic signal at Andrews Street and North Santa Cruz Avenue. As part of a community benefit, Safeway is offering to fund the full upgrade. The council should determine whether or not the community benefit being offered sufficiently outweighs the cumulative impacts caused by the project. If the council supports the Commission's recommendation regarding the traffic signal upgrade, the council should amend performance standard number 9 as outlined in the staff report. The applicant was unable to providing bike racks on site. If the council supports the Commission's recommendation to require bike racks, the council should include a new performance standard as outlined in the staff report. In relation to the Commission's 5th recommendation, Placing stepping stones across the bioswale would encourage foot traffic through an area of four-way traffic and create a false sense of security. Alternatively, the applicant could explore an additional pedestrian access path from the southern supermarket entrance to the existing public sidewalk along North Santa Cruz Avenue during the architecture and site application process. This could provide a delineated pathway closer to the adjacent commercial uses without encouraging pedestrian traffic across a four-directional vehicular crossing. If the council concurs with this alternative, an additional performance standard is outlined in the staff report. The applicant expressed concerns regarding the potential for vehicles and carts to traverse a 4-inch curb. In addition, the town's engineering division recognizes a 6-inch curb height as a standard height for right-of-way curbs. Given these safety concerns and engineering standards, a 6-inch curb is appropriate for the proposed development, and staff supports the requested curb height. If council concurs with staff's recommendation, a performance standard is included in the staff report. A modified truck route and logistics plan was included in a planning commission desk item. Staff agrees with the modifications in this desk item, and the planning commission recommended the modified plan be approved. If the council concurs with the commission's recommendation, the council should approve Exhibit 18 of the December 9th, 2009 Planning Commission staff report to replace Exhibit C of Exhibit 17 of the same report. That would be replacing Exhibit C of the proposed ordinance to include the modified truck route and logistics plan. Since the Planning Commission hearing, the town has received 43 additional public comments for a total of 60 public comments. The Planning Commission and staff find that the zone change is appropriate. Recommended actions and alternatives are included in the staff report. Actions are available on overhead slides to review if there are any questions. This concludes staff presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. I hope you're going to take good notes tonight as we work our way through this. This is pretty complex and comprehensive. So first of all, council, let's take care of disclosures and get that out of the way. And I will disclose that I did meet with the applicant. Any other disclosures? Vice Mayor?
I too met with the applicant.
Mrs. Spector?
I met with the applicant.
I met with the applicant as well.
Mr. Wasserman?
I met with the applicant and the owners of Nouveau and phone conversations with pet people.
Thank you. How about, if it's okay, if, I'm looking to staff here, if we do the motion accepting the report in the form of meeting minutes from Planning Commission before we get into questions of staff, is that permissible? I know this is just a formality, but is that all right to get that out of the way now?
Yes.
Good. So may I have a motion to that effect?
Madam Mayor, I would move to accept the discussion of the Planning Commission as noted in Section B of this staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Now, questions of staff by council. Mr. Rice.
At the Planning Commission and also in the letters that we have received, there's a lot of talk about traffic, roughly 2,000 additional trips. And what I'm having a tough time getting my head around is the methodology whereby that comes from. When you take an empty lot and build something on it, that's pretty clear. When you take what used to be a car dealership and put an office building and a restaurant, that's pretty clear. A grocery store typically doesn't draw people from outside of town. It's a resident-serving business. I don't see people driving from Saratoga, Campbell, et cetera, to a grocery store. We're taking a grocery store and making it a bigger grocery store. Where do the additional trips theoretically come from?
Theoretically, the grocery store would be offering a wider selection of products. So from the applicant's standpoint, instead of customers coming or going to larger grocery stores or other grocery stores across town to get products that they don't offer currently, the customers within the vicinity that would normally shop at the grocery store but otherwise go outside would now be able to find the products they want at the new grocery store.
And if I may, that's the crux of my problem with this, is that somebody that lives in the Almond Grove district that currently drives over to Los Gatos Boulevard to get to the grocery store that has a better selection, we'll hypothetically say, goes through the same intersections, actually more intersections than they would go through to get to this Safeway. I'm not, Commissioner Machici at the Planning Commission brought this issue up of he's not sure it doesn't actually decrease the amount of overall traffic. And I kind of came to that same conclusion or presumption at the beginning of my looking at this, that traffic might reorient a little bit, but if anything, it's going to reduce the amount of cross-town traffic. Is that a fair assessment?
It's definitely a fair assessment, theoretically. The number that you spoke to came from the ITE, the engineering calculations, which are based on the square footage for the store, such that an increase in the store increases the number of traffic trips or expected daily trips. So there's a theoretical side where we can guess what traffic changes will occur, and then there are the calculation side that our engineering consultant looked at.
Okay, so my problem is getting from the theoretical to the real, and that's I'll let it go for now, but I think that's going to be a topic of conversation. So thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Spector.
Thank you. With regard to the wall that is adjacent to the alley and to the west, can you tell me the length of that wall currently, and if it's going to be longer under the new plans, what the new length of that wall will be?
Are you referring to the structure wall, not the property wall?
Whatever wall runs adjacent to the alley and to its west. I don't know what you call it.
Okay, to the west, I believe that wall is about 150 feet currently. With the expansion, the wall will be, I believe, 250 feet approximately. That includes the sound wall that separates the loading dock spaces from the alleyway.
All right, thank you.
Other questions of staff at this time? Well, I have a couple. On the underground pedestrian pathway, if it is extended at a smaller width, as staff was pointing out could be done, do you have a sense as to how many parking spaces might be lost if that were to happen?
Depending on how they reconfigure the lower parking garage area, there could be 0 to 2 parking spaces lost. And that would depend on how exactly they reconfigure it. They could incorporate relocating the shopping cart return area into an exchange of parking spaces.
Okay. And they currently are 1 over the amount of parking that's required, if I remember right. So if council is interested in pursuing that, what would our options be since it's an unknown of 0 to 2 in terms of moving forward?
You would have a couple of options. One is which to recommend that the applicant explore to the greatest extent expanding that pathway and either approve it if they only lose 1 parking space so that they meet the exact parking space requirements, or under a plan development application, you also have the option of approving the application with a requirement to extend the pathway, even if that reduces the parking space to 1 space below the required parking spaces.
Okay, that makes sense. Actually, I think that's all my questions for right now. Any other questions from council at this time? Okay, so we are now going to open the public hearing. I have just a very few cards, so if you do want to speak on this, it would be nice if you filled out a card. We'll begin with the applicant, who will have up to 10 minutes for your total package presentation. So if you have more than 1 speaker, you can allocate your time within that 10 minutes.
Thank you. One moment, I'm looking for the... Great. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I'm Natalie Matei.
Move the microphone up a little bit. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Natalie Matei, Real Estate Manager with Safeway from Pleasanton, California. Thank you very much for having us tonight. It's our pleasure to be here. My team tonight is Ken Rodriguez, architect, Richard Zlatnik, architect on the site plan, Tony Catidra, civil engineer, and Joanne Benjamin, community liaison. Additionally, I have Raymond Lehman, the existing Safeway store manager, will all be available for questions as they arise tonight. It's very exciting to be here. I've been working on this project as I have with my team since 2005. I always share with people that I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and we actually began this effort before she was even in the game plan. So I'd like to go through our community outreach process and how the whole project has evolved. As I mentioned, we began our first discussions with the town in September 2005 to get an understanding of what would be feasible at the site. We then proceeded to have discussions with the adjacent property owner, the property known as the Contardo parcel, which has the three shops, the hair salon, the yogurt, and nail salon. We were in discussions to see if it would be possible to purchase that property. Unfortunately, we were not able to accomplish that. So at that point, understanding what our site plan boundaries would be, we reached out to the neighbors adjacent to us, right behind us. You can see in that picture, it's a great shot. And in May 2006 at Campo de Bocce, we held our first neighborhood meeting. In 2006 and 2007, we proceeded to have greater neighborhood meetings. We brought on Joanne Benjamin to help with the community outreach and give us a local perspective, make sure that we were doing all of our noticing. We noticed through the Los Gatos Weekly. Inside of our 3 Los Gatos stores, we did mailings, and then we held the community meetings at the neighborhood center. We also began discussions with the small retail shops, and we continued conversations with the 3 sisters, the owners of the Contardo property. In January 2009, it's hard to believe it's been a full year, but we had our CDAC meeting, and we proceeded to have 3 technical review meetings with staff. Those were the official meetings. We had several individual meetings with Public Works, fire, water, sanitation, planning, to really dial into all of the open questions on this site. In November of 2009, we established a website. We also posted signs at the site, which came out really nice. We painted a green outline which showed the proposed building, and then we also reached out to the Contardo shops and the Morley brothers to develop the construction management plan, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we proceeded to Planning Commission, as you all know. So there's been a lot of discussion about exactly what the project is, and everybody's seen Ken's elevations. I think everybody would agree he's done a beautiful job establishing a unique, one-of-a-kind Safeway store design. No other Safeway store has this architecture. He's really hit the home run. I think a bigger question is exactly what is Safeway proposing on the inside, and how did we develop that proposal? Here are 2 shots of what we have today, which we're all really familiar with, our lovely white bunker architecture, which opened in 1976. Safeway's actually been at the site since 1951. We were originally in a store that backed up against the Contardo shops and faced out to Andrews. In 1976, we demoed that building and built what is there today, which in its day did a great job. As we all know, this is the only grocery store on this side of 17. The existing size is 26,000 square feet. I know there's been a lot of discussion as to what size is and how that plays into the overall discussion. It is the only grocery store. It's neighborhood serving. It's downtown serving this side of town, and so our development our proposal is speaking to that. I know we're all familiar with what this store looks like. We've all shopped it. We've all walked through it. I'm sure, especially in preparation for for these meetings, but really speaking to what's going on inside the store and why Safeway is coming forward with this proposal. As I mentioned, it was probably a great store back in '76 and through the '80s. We have extremely tight aisles. We are ADA compliant, but it is extremely tight, and I think these photos speak to this. We have a lot of product that we are trying to get out there. The number one issue that we hear over and over again that our store manager can attest to is we are constantly out of stock. The product is simply not there. The categories of product that grocery stores are serving today has grown immensely. It's really the evolution of grocery shopping. Full categories that are out there today did not exist previously. Full organics, ethnic foods of all varieties. We always look at laundry detergent, which used to just be powder. Now there's liquid, there's fabric softeners, the whole array of baby products and baby food. We have a lot of products that back in the 60s and 70s simply weren't part of consumer shopping habits. And why are we out of stock? I think these are really critical pictures. We simply don't have the backroom space to hold the product. Our food prep area, this picture speaks volumes. We have absolutely no elbow room. It's a very tight operating situation. And then our trash, we've all seen that. So what are we proposing? We are proposing a lifestyle, state-of-the-art, elite grocery store for the neighborhood, for downtown. In size, it's still smaller than our Union store. It's still smaller than what you see most prototypical grocery stores today. It will have full organics. It'll have a full produce offering. We'll have a butcher for meat and seafood. We'll have a full bakery. We'll have an elite fine wine and self-checkout among the few. We'll also have our outdoor seating. Construction has become a question in the last few months. We were very happy to meet with staff and with Councilmember Wasserman to continue those discussions. We have developed a construction logistics plan with input from the Morley Brothers and the Contardo shop owners. We are seeking an off-site staging area. In my first meetings with the neighbors behind us, we proposed a new 6-foot masonry wall to replace the wood fence that you see there. We also developed an 11-point action plan with the retail shop owners. This afternoon, Joanne Benjamin and I met with the owners of Nouveau Salon, and we agreed to 3 additional points with them. We're going to work with them on their ventilation system, coming up with soundproofing for their front storefront, and also bringing the shops into our grand opening advertising campaign. So we'd like to include those points in our conditions of approval. I think one of the big misperceptions or the challenge to grasp, to understand, is exactly what the construction project's going to look like. I think there might be a thought that there's going to be heavy demolition for 10 months, which is the duration of the project. And I want to share these photos. This is a project that Bill Harrington, our Safeway construction manager, and I just did in Santa Cruz. This is a shop building that we demolished. This was day 1, 8 hours into the demolition. And you can see it's practically down. You see we have spectators there. Here's a photo of the same shopping center. The arrow is pointing to the old Safeway store, which we demolished. We built a new Safeway behind it. We had 10,000 square feet of shops to the right there that needed to stay up and operating, all mom and pops. We had to fully give them TLC and keep all access and operations open. So this is day 3. You'll see the parking lot's full of customers. It's a clean job. It's going to be the same crew working on this project. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ken Rodriguez to address the alley and other questions. I don't see there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Town Council. Ken Rodriguez.
Your time is limited, so
I will make it very quickly. I think that what I'll do is I just want to show you the slides that we have, so in case you have questions, we can always go back to them. Natalie's mentioned the architecture. I know you've all seen that in the packet, and we concur with staff's recommendation on all of the points in terms of the architecture. But these were some photo montages we did at the corner and at the street and then along Andrews. So you get a real pretty clear picture of exactly the existing conditions, the site plan, and we can refer back to this, and our elevations. One thing I did want to do is just show the street elevations that we proposed. What we tried to do in the building design was to pick up,
Those 10 minutes go so fast, don't they?
It did. The buzzer, and everything goes off. Okay. Well.
So let me see if council has any questions for you.
Thank you very much.
And we don't at this particular moment in time.
Madam Mayor, I actually do have a question.
Yeah, we changed our mind.
I didn't change the mind, just, was formulating. When you came to the mic, the statement was that there was going to be some explanation of the rear parking or rear alley.
Yes.
Width, and you are obviously not able to get to that.
Thank you.
And we can save this to the end when you have your departing comments, but was there something specific that the council needs to know about issues relative to that width of that driveway there that we've not already evaluated in the packet?
Yes, I just wanted to give you a brief history that obviously we had been working with staff, the neighborhood, some members of the neighborhood, and our own design team on that alley for quite some time. It was the first part of our design, and as Natalie mentioned, we spent about 2.5, 3 years looking at that. I also wanted to show you that we've included photographs of other alleys within town, just so that we could compare with sizes, how they operate, what they do. Obviously, like you, I've been here 27 years, and I've been using those alleys too, and so I know them quite well, and I just wanted you to know that we brought that material so that we could talk about it. And again, from our standpoint, a lot of time and effort obviously has gone into that design. We're happy to hear the council's comments and then try to address those.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Mrs. Spector.
Thank you. This is probably for Ms. Matei, I'm assuming. And it relates to issues that came up at the Planning Commission about the people who go to Safeway parking on the street. And I know you know your customers extremely well. And so I was thinking that the time that a customer of Safeway might park on the street is if he or she didn't want to take the time to go into the underground garage. And so wants to do something quickly, parks on the street, runs in, runs out. Is that your experience in your professional experience, or what does someone who wants to shop very quickly do when they come to a grocery store with subterranean parking?
That's a great question. And you'll see at the top of the parking lot there, we have about, what is the parking count on the top level, Richard? We call this our teaser parking, which is just for that purpose. If you need to just run in and get some milk, or let's say that you have some physical challenges and you don't want to go into the underground garage, even though there is ADA and handicap parking down below, there is this parking option up above. And generally, there are always going to be spaces available. We really see limited parking on the street. It's just a consumer shortcut. They want to get as close to those front doors as possible. So I wouldn't anticipate that we'd have any on-street parking. I think for those instances, they would use the teaser parking on top.
Mrs. Spector?
The teaser parking, which is probably going to be everyone that's going to go to first, that is not limited in time, right? Somebody could park there and shop for an hour. Is that correct?
Correct.
In your experience, has there been any benefit, or has Safeway ever tried limiting the parking for people who want to move in and move out quickly?
I think right now we have the parking lot posted. I don't know how many hours are posted, just to avoid loitering or overnight parking. Is it 2 hours, 1 hour? Is how we have it currently designated. We could designate a few spaces immediately in front of the store for short-term 30-minute, 20-minute parking.
But in your experience with Safeway, have you ever done that, and how has it worked?
We actually have. We've tried different options. We've done either 20-minute parking, or we've said deli parking only. That might be an option near the outdoor seating to put, if you're just running in to grab a sandwich, it would be an option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move now to public comment, and each of you will have up to 3 minutes, beginning with Eric Iverson.
Last to the first up. I'm not terribly familiar with the overall design, but I do shop at Safeway and have since '76, and I appreciate the offerings there. I live near Safeway on the section of University between Highway 9 and Andrew Street, and I can tell you that there's a lot of traffic currently, and it travels at a high rate of speed quite often. There's literally no hour of the day when there isn't a car traveling in excess of 45 and 55 miles an hour on that street. That's not an issue directly for Safeway, but if you do increase the capacity of that store and the offerings of that store, you're going to increase the number of cars traveling on that street, absolutely. And I'm sure the same is true for North Santa Cruz. You also have a lot of folks coming out of Town Terrace, and you have a lot of folks coming across University from Town Terrace on foot. That's a great place for a sidewalk and a stop sign, which would help control the traffic on University. But overall, if you make a larger Safeway, if you increase the offerings, which personally I'm all for, you are going to increase the number of cars going down that corridor and North Santa Cruz and Andrew Street. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iverson. Any questions? Next, we have Brent Hatfield.
Okay, once again, my name is Brent Hatfield. I'm the owner of Nouveau the Salon. My business borders the south side of the Safeway parking lot. At the Planning Commission meeting, I voiced my concerns over the size of the project and the circulation of traffic. The overall impression that I have is this project is going to happen. So regardless of what I think, for it or against it, I have 3 minutes to talk. I have to spend my time here protecting my business and my staff. So as a business owner, I can only focus on minimizing the impact of the construction on my business. Natalie Mattei and I have reached an 11-point agreement that I urge you to make a condition of approval. In addition, in a late meeting today, Natalie agreed that at Safeway's expense, soundproofing of my storefront and side wall will be installed, and Safeway will provide us with source capture ventilation, since we will no longer have ventilation through front and side doors of the store. She has also assured me that there will be no construction parking in the town lot, leaving it available and accessible to surrounding businesses and residents. As part of the agreement, Safeway will be providing us with signage in multiple locations, and I'd like to request that the town will work with us on the placement of these signs, as they will be our only visibility to the public during much of the construction. Safeway has also agreed to include my store in grand opening advertising. I hope the council will include these as conditions of approval in any vote tonight, if it is voted on for approval. That's what I have written down, and I don't know how much time I have left, but I'm going to be as passionate as what I was with them this afternoon. Not only myself, but I have other people that run their business out of there. They lease the stations. I told them, not to worry, that I have their back. I presented it in a way, the reason the soundproofing is so important is that you come after a hard day of work and you want to come to Nouveau and you want to relax, you want to get your hair done, you want to forget, the outside world. Well, if there's a jackhammer going on, loud noises, that's going to be detrimental to our business. This isn't drive up, get a yogurt and leave. This isn't drive up, get a document and take off. This is people who are locked in there 2 hours. The 9 other people that lease stations from us, they're there 10 hours a day. Okay, so my time's up. So I think you get what I'm saying, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. We'll pause just a moment to see if anyone has any questions for you. Vice Mayor Brzezinski?
Yes, Mr. Hatfield, have you made those 11 conditions accessible to the staff at this point?
Yeah, they're on staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Other questions of Mr. Hatfield? Mr. Wasserman?
Thank you. Just for clarification through the mayor, I know of the 11. I think what Mr. Hatfield's referring to is actually 4 others, not 3. And I see ventilation, soundproofing, the grand opening participation, and parking in the town lot. 3's been mentioned, and then 4 was listed. It was 4. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me just clarify with staff. Do you already have a written list of all of these, or were there new ones just mentioned that you don't have down?
There were new ones that were just mentioned. I don't believe we have a copy of that.
Okay, so we'll continue on with the public hearing, and perhaps those could be provided to them. Okay, next, we'll move on to the next speaker, please. That would be Jutta Stuhlmuller. I'm sorry, you can correct me.
My name is Jutta Stuhlmuller, and I have been in this in Los Gatos. I've lived in Los Gatos since 1972. And I love the town. I think it's wonderful, but I definitely think we need a newer, better store. A lot of friends of mine who live up in the mountains, they feel like they have to come to the Safeway, buy the few things that they have. They don't have everything, so then they have to go to Lunardi's or someplace else to complete their shopping. So I will appreciate it if you consider the new store. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Shepard?
Good evening, members of the council. My name's Paul Shepard, live at Tate Avenue in the Almond Grove section. And in interest of full disclosure, by virtue of the California Community Property Law, I'm an investor in a business in your downtown. I don't have much to do with it other than that limited participation. I note that there's no environmental impact report required. I cannot believe that you would attempt to get away with a negative declaration when you're doubling the size of a store. But that, what lawyers and courts are for. I do not see any analysis of an economic impact, and that is my main concern. I don't know if staff has visited one of their new superstores. They keep calling it a grocery store, but it's a big box retailer with a full line of inventory. Like you mentioned, a community benefit being an expanded inventory. Now, on behalf of all the little independent retailers on Santa Cruz and in Los Gatos, that expanded inventory is their inventory. And the sales that are made in this Safeway store of taxable items would be sales that would have been made in the existing merchants on Santa Cruz Avenue. Now, I appreciate all that you do and what your predecessors have done to establish the magic of downtown Los Gatos. It is mentioned in tour guides. People from as close as Saratoga, California, to as far as Saratoga, New York, include a stop in downtown Los Gatos when they're visiting Northern California. Why? Because you have a selection of merchandise by independent retailers that they won't get in their own super Safeways. Now, at the end of the book, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Hemingway quotes, "Ask not for whom the bell tolls for thee." This Safeway tonight, I hear the bell tolling. And who is going to be impacted? The downtown businesses, the people who work for those downtown businesses, and eventually the people who own the buildings that are rented by the downtown businesses. Within 5 years, many of those retailers will be gone. Within 10 years, they'll all be gone. And Los Gatos will be just like any town USA. And your net sales tax revenue will actually decline because you won't have the benefit of all those people coming from outside the area who now come to enjoy and participate in the facilities that are available.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Pause there a moment and see if anyone has any questions for you. But we do not. Thank you. David Stonecipher?
That's going to be a tough one to follow. My name is David Stonecipher. I live on Overlook Road in Los Gatos. I think most of you know me. I'm also a member of the Los Gatos Arts Commission, amongst other things. Have you all ever tried to make a left turn onto Santa Cruz Avenue from Safeway, a left-hand turn? It's dangerous, and it will get more so, I feel. Turning into Safeway is just about as dangerous. Going in, often you're stuck behind 2 or 3 cars in front of you that are vying for one of the few parking spots that are more conveniently located near the front door, or they're going to be jammed up going into the underground parking, and it's just going to create a bigger traffic jam than we already have. A right-hand turn lane in front of the yogurt shop would help. It does mean we would probably lose a beautiful tree, but it would be better to lose a tree than a life, and maybe relieve some of the traffic congestion. A 20-foot 6 alley is needed to relieve the circulation problems around the rear of the building, since I think almost all of you have commented that you use that just to move around town. I mean, it's impossible without that area. University, Andrews, and Monterey Avenues will become further impacted with cars cutting through to avoid these traffic jams. There's no mitigation that Safeway can do to make up for the lack of the infrastructure except to reduce the size of the project. Since Safeway won't reduce the size of the project, or doesn't want to, I hope you all will consider doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, Mr. Stonecipher. Mrs. Spector?
At the Planning Commission meeting, and then again you this evening have mentioned reducing the size of the Safeway, but I don't recall anyone being specific as to the amount or the reason. Do you have any further details on what you would like?
Well, yeah, I do, actually. What I would like is I would like Safeway to stay the size that it is and to clean their act up. I mean, it's a beautiful size store. It's in a wonderful location. They have a captivated market. The only complaints that anybody has about Safeway is Safeway. And I think if they decided they want to go out onto Los Gatos Boulevard and build this mega store, which would probably be more appropriate, there would probably be 15 or 20 people in the rears who will say, I'll take this space and I'll make it nice and I'll do it organic and I'll do everything everybody wants. It doesn't have to have a post office and a bank and a Starbucks. Another one? That's my thought.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Gary Harwin?
I'm Gary Harwin, and along with my wife, Cindy, both of us 45-year residents of the town, we're the owners of one of Los Gatos' business icons, the Pet People of Los Gatos. I would like to take this opportunity to expand on the primary issue raised in our January 8th letter to the council, the proposed lengthening of southbound left-turn collector lane on North Santa Cruz Avenue at Andrews. As I mentioned, this will result in eliminating 3 of the 4 curbside parking spots in front of Intero Real Estate,
which are typically used exclusively by our customers. It's my understanding this proposed lengthening was based on a standard town formula that is used to calculate traffic volume based on proposed square footage. It is my belief that Safeway expansion will result in a very minimal increase in traffic. I'm basing my assumption on the following. First, people who live east of 17 and north of 85 will continue to shop at the neighborhood's grocery stores in their area. Second, people that live in the greater downtown area and Montecito will continue to shop at Safeway, but will purchase more of the grocery products at Safeway because of a greatly expanded product selection and a more customer-friendly store layout. Thirdly, the minimal traffic increase will be the result of a relatively small number of residents switching from other local grocery stores due to such factors as price, increased product selection, and location convenience to their work or home. Also, because of underground parking, increased business might also occur during very rainy or very hot weather. In the case of the proposed Safeway expansion, I do not believe use of the traffic volume formula is applicable. What will noticeably increase will be the amount of product the overall customer base purchases at the new Safeway, not the number of customer trips to the store. Concluding, I would like to see the town leave the left turn lane as is with no change now or in the future. However, should left turn traffic substantially increase in the future due to the Safeway expansion, then for the town to follow the alternative plan outlined in the last paragraph of our January 8th letter. Thank you for your careful consideration on this important issue, an issue that we believe could adversely affect one of Los Gatos's independently owned businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Harwin. Any questions? Not right now. Thank you. Chris Wiley.
Good evening. My name is Chris Wiley, 544 University Avenue. I live on the backside of Safeway and have been there 79, 80. I'm not against Safeway improving the store. I think it's getting to be a big size that is getting a little bit out of hand. They have great ideas, but for that location, it's very bad. I'm not unfamiliar with change. You guys know the situation I went through with the bocce court. So supportive of them, got them there. Nobody can park in front of my house. Parking goes hither and yon. We've corrected a lot of that, so don't get me wrong there. But the point is, it took 10 years, and I know you had said in the past, Mayor, that, gee, this is a great thing, but nobody lived across the street and had to put up with the sound and the traffic. I'm afraid with Safeway, if we allow this now and not send it back to the planning department to be reviewed, I'm not saying stop it. Let's review it as to size, traffic, etc. Let's do it now, because once it's done, we have to deal with what we dealt with the bocce court and other activities in that area. And we should seriously look at it, because I see the homes in my area change from ownership to rentals. And you don't see a lot of the rental people out here tonight, because they can move and leave. People who live there on a regular basis and own the property are not as plentiful as there used to be, and I think with the Safeway increasing and the traffic, they're just going to say, turn my place into a rental. I know people have been working with Safeway, but not all of us. This announcement came to some neighbors, but not to others. I didn't get this. My one neighbor got it today, this morning, right before the meeting. Got home from work, and there it is. I think we need more work together as a town with Safeway, as well as a people. But please return it to the planning and let them work with this, with the issue of the size and the traffic. I don't think the book traffic is going to help. The lady had pointed out that people come down here, just do a little bit of shopping, you'll have more people shop, because as other people pointed out, you have more to offer. I don't think it's just the trips, it's going to be the amount of people and the trips. I think there's going to be a big increase in that. So please, I mean, other people are going to have other things to say. I give credit to those who come up. And just one real quick, I went to all the businesses around there today. Some of them didn't even know what was going on. They got a hold of the owners of the buildings, but they personally didn't walk over to the businesses and explain what's going on. And to be honest, some of the businesses are people that come from other country who don't have the culture that we have to get involved. I actually went to each one. Most of them are foreigners, and they said, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't know about this. So I know Safeway didn't do their job of looking at the neighbors when they say we've worked with the neighbors. So please, if possible, I'd love to see it go forth. You guys know I probably won't be here when some of this happens. I'll be back overseas. But please send it back to the planning department.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. Mr. Wasserman?
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. First of all, thank you very much for your very detailed letter. You mentioned a couple of times sending it back to the Planning Commission for review of size was one, and I believe traffic was your other point that you mentioned.
Correct.
What do you feel a second review of those topics would reveal that hasn't been discussed the first time through?
I don't think the size was really discussed. The way it was presented in 2007 at the first meeting was, here's what we're going to do, and by the way, if this doesn't happen, we're leaving town. They already own the property, so we're dealing with just one business. If we had inputs from Nob Hill and other ideas from other businesses, I think we'd get a different face to the whole thing. I haven't seen them say we're willing to reduce the structure and take out maybe the pharmacy so we don't compete with Walgreens and some of this stuff and make it so that there's less traffic. Do we need that big of a store in that area? You know, that's my real concern. That traffic flow is going to tie up a lot of stuff, folks.
Thank you.
Wait. We're not done with you yet. Mrs. Spector.
Thank you. Same question I asked before. You wanted to go back to the Planning Commission. You're concerned about size. You're concerned about traffic. Do you have any specifics? I mean, do you want it to be the same size as it is now? Do you want it to be 10% smaller? Do you have any sense of where you would like this to go?
Right. A wee bit of a bigger size could be possible, as long as they're not having schlock involved with that. By that I mean putting in this pharmacy is nice, but do we really need it when we have other offerings to keep the small community thing? And yes, I have looked at the traffic flow. I sit on my porch many a time to watch the traffic flow. There's no doubt in my mind that that'll increase. It's all going to come out on Andrews. Remember, it comes in on one side and comes out on Andrews. It's going to go right or left. It's their only choice if it goes underground parking. I mean, I'd like to work with them and other people, and yes, they'd have to, explain certain aspects. I think they need more details besides just pictures on the floor plan. Is the back part just going to be storage so there's less out on the floor? I don't know. They haven't gone in depth, and I have gone to their site. I don't know if you have. I've actually tried to blow up their parking lot, but the digital is so poor you can't work with that. Yes, you have to come to downtown and still work with it. There's no doubt between the bocce court, you watch what happened to that corner. You can't tell me Safeway is not going to have an effect. They keep saying they're using this book. And I understand what the book is. I've done construction before. It doesn't apply to here because I don't know if they're taking into account the new people they bring in who have totally ignored this store because of the poor upkeep.
Now we're done with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Eric Morley.
Good evening, Mayor McNutt and council members. My name is Eric Morley, 506 North Santa Cruz Avenue. I co-own the business that is directly across the street from Safeway, occupying the vast majority of Andrews frontage. Other than the occupants of the businesses to the south, we're probably the most impacted on a daily basis by Safeway and would obviously be the most impacted by the construction. I do want to commend both Kenneth Rodriguez, Joanne Benjamin, and Natalie for both their cooperation and collaboration in the way that they've approached this project over the last 4 years, many years. Also, in terms of architecture, I think the way that Kenneth Rodriguez and Partners has designed it to break up the building is very appropriate. To put this in context, this is one of the smallest, probably, Safeways. This is not a 200,000 square foot Costco or 150,000 foot Walmart. This is a very appropriately sized Safeway that has been well designed and will complement the community. As I mentioned, we previously was born and raised here. We own property in the downtown and also live in town. We have a very strong vested interest in the quality of this community. We would ask that you approve the applicant's recommendation on the logistics as well as what the Planning Commission recommended. And I also would just close by saying that it's very important, especially in these economic times, to recognize the significant financial investment that Safeway is prepared to invest in our community. And I think what they're proposing is something that benefits the immediate neighborhood, it benefits residents of this town and the entire community, and I would urge you to approve it this evening as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Morley? No. Thank you. I have just one card left, so, no, I don't. Never mind. Amir Karimi?
Hi, my name is Amir Karimi and I'm from Tiber's Pizza, 444 North Santa Cruz. Safeway has never talked to us, and today's letter in the paper says the concern. We have attended other meetings, Planning Commission, and our concern is to have the town review through the Planning Department the big plan. Did they really do a traffic study and parking as it reflect to their plan? Thank you.
Thank you. Now I have just one card left, so if anyone else wants to speak. And again, that's not true. Okay. Peter Kleiss.
Hi, my name is Peter Kleiss, and I live at 258 Main Street, right down the street here. This proposed Safeway is not even close to a large Safeway. 45,000 square feet is actually on the very small side of their new model, and the model that most grocers have implemented throughout the country and most other environments. The ICSC, the International Council of Shopping Center definition of a mega store that some people want to call this, is over 100,000 square feet. The standard box format of Kroger, Fry's, Safeway, Albertsons now is over 50,000 square feet. One of the things that's been done is you pull in some of the what would be smaller shops that right now in Los Gatos are ancillary trips and bring it into the Safeway store to reduce traffic, such as the banks, the deli, and other ancillary uses. What's noted is Safeway is making a commitment to this community. They've been here for 50 years, but a new store and the amount of money they're going to be spending here, they're committing for probably another 100 years in this store, in this town. And they're one of the great grocers in the country as a brand. And Walgreens and Petco have been allowed to expand. And they went into existing stores, but they've expanded their models as the retail industry itself has grown and expanded, where those companies needed to have an improved inventory. And one thing that's not noted is that they're also increasing the number of jobs. There's going to be potentially 60 new jobs available to this community. One of the other big benefits to Safeway's organization is their quick turnaround. I've been witnessed other Safeways that have been torn down and remodeled, and the average amount of time that Safeway can turn their store around is about half of what typical construction time is, and they're probably going to lose between $40,000 and $60,000 a day. So timing is really critical, and they have a history of success in other communities by moving and doing their construction very quickly. The other thing to note is that they're willing to pay for the lighting upgrade, the light upgrade on the Andrews and the street. And the last comment is the population density that we currently have in the Montesrino in this part of Los Gatos necessitates the size of the store. And if you add up the square footage of Lenardi's, the current Safeway, Nob Hill, Trader Joe's, well, it sounds like there's a lot of names. Every one of those stores is undersized relative to what that store usually wants. And the amount of total square footage of grocer per capita is still very inadequate. And that's one of the reasons why almost every grocery store in town, their sales per foot exceeds their averages. And so this community needs the extra square footage. And adding another 1,000 square feet of selection in wine or cutting back 1,000 square feet is not going to make a difference in traffic counts.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiss. Wait, Mr. Wasserman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You spoke very quickly, and I was trying to catch a number of things that you said. First of all, what line of work are you in?
I own shopping centers.
Okay. And what size, for instance, Lenardi's? What size, just to give me an idea, the Lenardi's?
I'm not sure. I would assume it's 35 to 40,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wasserman, if you're interested, staff actually has a slide they can put up that shows all the grocery stores in town. It's on the back page of your...
Yeah, what is the square footage? Undersized.
Did you, Mr. Wasserman, did you have other questions for him?
No, that was, I didn't turn over the last page. Thank you.
Thank you. No. That's it for you. Thank you. Mr. Arzi, who may or may not be the last card I have. But if you
Larry
have-
Arzi. You know, I brought up last time I was here that we're not protecting the north side residential districts. It's obvious tonight that we're not protecting the north side commercial small businesses either. We send obligatory notices for public hearings, but we don't say much on these except that there's an application in progress. The applicant did practically nothing to meet its obligation to advise the neighborhoods of the extent of the project. They advised them there was a project, but they didn't tell them much else and how wonderful it's going to be. They sent out warm and fuzzy notices, and of course there was a couple meaningless meetings. You know, this is the biggest request for intensification since Alpha Beta at the corner of Santa Cruz Avenue and Highway 9. The use permit for that building has forever altered the nearby residential properties, and at close inspection, it has gone from a well-tended blue-collar neighborhood to a less than desirable location. More weeds than flowers. The continued degradation of even more of this neighborhood by the approval of Safeway almost doubling its size and definitely doubling car trips. I now believe in statistics when they benefit me. Safeway does not have to be 46,500, hi Mom, 46,500 square feet to offer benefits to the community. They don't have to be that big to give back to the community. The surrounding commercial buildings represent the feeling of the kind of neighborhood commercial we want. When the Zanardi Shopping Center gets fully leased and going, possibly with a specialty market, because he's let it well known that he's out looking for one, then there's going to possibly be another 2,000 square feet on the street. And that's the busiest street in Los Gatos. So please, plan ahead. Send this back to planning, and let's reassess what this project is going to do to the north side neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arzi. And no questions. Does anyone else want to speak tonight? Seeing none, I will ask the applicant to come back up, and you may have up to 5 minutes to clarify any point that you would like to.
Great. I'll speak quickly. We agree with Mr. Harwin's proposal on the left turn extension. We support waiting, putting the money into a fund, and then waiting to see if it's necessary. We do not believe that the traffic numbers that are being outlined in the traffic study are going to reflect our customer transaction count. To talk about statistics, if everybody has pencils out, I'm going to go through some numbers very quickly. As was mentioned with the speakers, the 2,000 trips are based on an ITE standard of square footage. They are not based on a customer transaction count. The customer transaction count that Safeway is very much aware of is beneath the numbers that are being estimated. If you were to back in what the existing count is, it would be 2,600 cars per day, trips per day, equals 18,300 per week. That is more trips than our Union store has today. If you were then to add on the additional 2,000 trips that the traffic study is, or the ITE standard is indicating, that it would equal 32,300 trips, which is more than our store at Hamilton and Meridian, which is 55,000 square feet, and the largest volume Safeway store in the South Bay, and probably the largest volume grocery store in the South Bay. So I appreciate that those are large numbers. Safeway lets them be because from a CEQA standpoint, we're bulletproof. That's absolute worst case scenario that we don't believe will ever hit. But the transaction counts do not support those ITE ITE numbers. The bottom line is that it is a neighborhood serving store. We do not anticipate people from Scotts Valley or Campbell or Saratoga driving to the store. From the east side of 17, I don't believe that people are going to pass the Union Safeway or the 4 other stores to then cross the freeway and come over to Safeway. So I do respect the concerns about the traffic counts, but I believe that they're inflated based on a different ITE standard. The question about store size, we do believe this is a properly sized store for this side of town. Regarding whether there should be a pharmacy or coffee, the other grocers along Los Gatos Boulevard are allowed to have coffee. They do currently. It's kind of like indicating what goes into a merchant store or on a restaurant menu. Those items are always going to change, and we're simply responding to our customer feedback and allowing for flexibility. With regards to a pharmacy, I think a perfect example is the synergy between well, for example, when my little one was a baby, she got the flu and I got the flu at the same time, and it was fabulous to be able to have a pharmacy and to get chicken soup and to get diapers and to get all of the needs that you could possibly want in that situation in one shopping trip. So I respect that there is a Walgreens down the street. Their business model is going to change over time. Ours has had pharmacy in it for over 40 years, and we would like to have that convenience here. I think that concludes. Actually, to Mr. Wasserman, your question about the 4 points on the construction management schedule, I would like to read that into the record, that we would like to add on to that condition of approval: ventilation, storefront soundproofing, grand opening, advertising, and Safeway agreeing not to park in the public lot. And that concludes my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait just a moment. I wanted to ask one question before I turn it to council for questions. Would you be willing to share with us what your daily number of transactions are at Safeway currently?
I can give round numbers. It is a proprietary number, and basically our competitors can back into sales volumes with that, which is the guarded sacred cow in the grocery industry. But I can give round numbers.
And would you do that, please?
I'm sorry. So our let's see, existing numbers and then plus the added 2,000 trips, what that would equal?
I would be happy with just existing numbers, and a range would be fine for me. I just want to get a sense as to where we are.
Okay. Our existing numbers are well below the ITE's estimate of 2,600 trips per day. I would say that they are probably at least 1/3 less than that. Comparing the numbers to the existing plus proposed, as I mentioned, the existing plus proposed starts to get in the range of our Hamilton and Meridian store, but is still more than that store, which I indicated is the highest sales volume Safeway store in the South Bay, of which there are about 25, 30 stores, and probably the highest sales volume grocery store in general.
Thank you. Mr. Rice.
Thank you. One of the issues that was brought up was the continuation of the pathway in the garage to cover the, I believe it's the easternmost stalls. Have you looked at that at all from the standpoint of, can it be done without sacrificing the parking numbers, or will it sacrifice the parking numbers?
Can we put that drawing up?
We're not sure, apparently. We're having some technical difficulties.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, just so that we're talking about the same path. It's at the underground garage, the pedestrian pathway to the east side of the
I think they're getting it here.
garage. It'll be towards the end. Currently, I believe we have 152 parking stalls, and code is 151. So in talking about all of the different issues that have come up, we've only had leeway with one parking stall. I recall this coming up during Planning Commission and in the staff report. There's an existing pathway from the elevator lobby down.
They have a pointer, if you could, not on that.
Murphy's Law.
Natalie, the red box that looks like a pointer actually turns it off. So,
I'm sorry.
no problem. Just.
I think we all just learned that. Would it be easier just to use the overhead? Oh, yay.
Okay, what, back one more. Okay. So in the underground garage, this is our elevator lobby, and I think the question is, can this pedestrian pathway, which services the handicap stalls right here, be extended? And I think they would like it to be extended down to here.
That's my question, yes. Can you get it through that next aisle one way or another without sacrificing two spaces?
We would have to sacrifice two spaces, and the challenge here is the columns, the structural columns that will hold up the building. As I said, we're one stall over, which we're happy to sacrifice. We've continued investigating. We can put an actual parking stall right here. You know, perhaps it becomes the store manager spot. I don't think that this is an ideal customer stall, or maybe it becomes excess shopping carts or something, but just in order to get to the 151 count, we can do that and then extend the pathway out. One thing that we ask staff is, could we possibly do less than the official 5 feet of pedestrian path? And I think the staff response is you could do 3 feet. So yes, we would be happy to consider that.
And if you did it at 3 feet, would you then avoid losing those two stalls? Is that what you're saying?
We would still lose the two stalls. However, it's going to help with the overall flexibility with shopping carts getting to the other stalls.
Okay.
Because in this middle area right here, you have the handicap stalls, which generally aren't utilized as much. There are more stalls up here which will get utilized more. So having people with carts coming through, you've got a little bit more elbow room. Here, without the handicap stalls, it's going to be tighter. So going to a 3-foot path, I think, would be safer.
Thank you.
Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Matei, back to your point about the ITEs, and without giving away any corporate secrets, your third less, somewhere around 1,800. I used to had a store and an office across the street from you for 14 years. Moved out of there 6 years ago. It's probably been 6 or 7 years since my wife has shopped at your store on a regular basis because of a lot of what you showed in the video, okay? Not having the selection that she wanted. We live in the Almond Grove area by the post office. You're the closest store, yet we drive out to Los Gatos Boulevard. So back to Mr. Rice's point, people tend to go for their bread and milk to wherever's closest. And I noticed these other stores 1, 2, 3 miles apart from each other. What my point is to you is, back in the day, I apologize for this in advance, but that Safeway store has gone down in quality over the last several years. Back in its best days, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, because I believe the numbers you're giving us now are probably pretty current, maybe the last year or so. Back in its best days, when people wanted to go to that Safeway because of the produce, because of this, because of the ambiance, whatever, what were the highest traffic numbers? What's the best volume that store has ever done?
The store is doing slightly less than it did probably in the heyday, and I think that that's probably a reflection of the economy as well as the .com bust. So I think there are several factors that are weighing into that.
But are you saying in its best days it's below this 2,600 IT number?
Oh, yes, definitely. In its best days, it would have been less than that number.
That,
Yes.
that location, best days.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mrs. Spector.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, when you and I spoke, and maybe this is partially to you and partially to staff, I understand that even though it is anticipated that Safeway will have possibly a banking kiosk and a pharmacy and coffee, it's my understanding, though, that you are not, Safeway is not obligated to keep those uses forever. It might become some different kind of use, something in the future that's the in thing in 10 years or 5 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so to the extent that at the Planning Commission meeting, you know, there was testimony that, well, we don't need a bank or we don't need, you know, whatever. Safeway wouldn't have to have that. They could simply use the square footage for something else.
Correct.
Another thing that came up a lot at the Planning Commission, and in fact it came up so much that it had a 3-3 vote, which in effect would have been a vote for denial, was the alleyway on the back, in the back of the store. And I will tell you that is of concern to me. And so I want to give Safeway the opportunity to address that concern publicly. My concern is that people do use that alleyway. They use it, I should say, I use it not to go to Safeway, but to just get from one end of town to the other. It's very narrow. It's uncomfortably narrow. And what's going to happen is that we may say, well, it's not going to be 2,000 cars more a day, but it's going to be more cars a day when Safeway expands. And also there's going to be a longer wall, creating a more of a narrow tunnel effect in that alleyway behind Safeway. I am concerned about the width of that alleyway. And in looking at the staff's report, I note that, for example, the garage, there's 4 options. One is to keep the garage the same size and pull back Safeway 5 feet. I would like you to address my concern before we get into our deliberations.
And thank you for that opportunity, because at Planning Commission, the public hearing portion had closed. So when the discussion took place, Safeway wasn't able to talk to the technical aspects of that. So I'm going to have Ken come up in just a moment and talk about the technical aspects. I want to touch on a couple of the social issues going on, which are probably 3 or 4. When I first met with the neighbors directly behind the store, our university residences, the biggest item that constantly came up was noise. So that is where the 6-foot masonry wall came from. That's where the extension of the loading dock wall came from. There was heightened concern about our delivery hours, which we've really cracked down on, concern about loitering. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about homeless and skateboarding. So those are issues with the alley that have always been there. To your point, the alley gets utilized heavily as a shortcutting option, and I think in the proposed site plan, that would be the primary use of the alley. Our customers will either utilize the teaser parking in the front of the store, coming in the driveway on North Santa Cruz and exiting out Andrews, which are existing driveways today. So if you come in here, you're going to go out here, you're going to go out here. If you're coming into the garage, you're either going to come into the ramp or you're going to come in off of Andrews and then exit out this way. The likelihood of someone coming down the side and then out is really circuitous. I don't believe that somebody's going to take that long path. Our Safeway delivery trucks do utilize the alley. They come in southbound on Andrews, they back up and they depart. So the question of alley width and how much it's going to be utilized, I do think it's going to continue to be utilized by people that are taking that shortcut option. And then, Ken, if you can speak to the technical aspects.
I just wanted to show a couple of slides because, like you, Council Member Spector, I use that alley all the time too. And I want to just go to a couple of shots. This is the continuation of the alley, of course, from Andrews, and Campo de Bacci on the right-hand side. And that alley width is just slightly larger than our alley width. So they're nearly the same, within 18 inches or so of each other. The one thing that this has is a long wall along the outdoor bocce courts, as you probably know, and then some other walls that exist along this side, and then buildings that exist here. The one thing about the alleys is this: if you look at behind Mr. Zanardi's center, that's a larger drive aisle. People do drive much quicker down there. I've gone out and studied this for Safeway in hopes of this question. I think the wider you make that alley, one, it's going to be a faster traveled vehicles. There is going to be more noise for those neighbors that are behind there, and I have spoke to them and asked them just to think about this. Obviously, with quicker speeds, there's going to be more noise there, too. I think what that building does today is what most alleys do, and that's slow down the traffic. And the reason for it is you do have that wall that exists today of Safeway, and it is going to be extended. Staff mentioned it is going to be longer, and it says what it is in the report. And I think that's going to help the project. I think that that's going to slow the traffic down there. So I think it's going to continue to function as an alley. And the one good thing that Natalie mentioned when you go back to the site plan is the circulation. Here, people aren't going to make that maneuver. You can go down or up this ramp. You can go down or up this ramp. So most of the circulation is going to be handled as it normally would, down into a basement, and very convenient. It's not going to be one ramp, i.e. like the Gap building, you know, and across from Old Town. Thank you. So I think the other positive thing is besides what I've mentioned, is that this is used by truck traffic, and then they'll pull out and back out onto Highway 9. So from a technical standpoint, I think the alley functions well. In the history of its existence, there hasn't been any documented issues in terms of crashes or those kinds of things to my knowledge. So what else could we tell you about the alley?
Let's see if we have any further questions.
Thank you.
Mrs. Spector? You?
Thank you.
May I ask a question? And I'll get into this more when we have council discussion, because I am curious about the definition of an alley. But if we continue to call that an alley, what if it were one way going south? Would that work for
going in this direction?
Correct. Which for it's what I would
protect our
consider
truck.
to be its primary purpose, which is a driveway access into the loading dock. So would that work for the business's point of view? And then we'll talk about whether it would even be possible from a community point of view.
I think keeping all options open and keeping as much circulation available is always a good thing. To the direct question of how this alley would affect Safeway and our customer circulation in the proposed project, as long as our truck delivery route was protected in the southbound direction, that's our primary use for the alley. As I mentioned, I think our customers are going to be using the other driveways more frequently. I think probably this part of the neighborhood comes in and maybe then goes up to these shops or over to Starbucks. I think southbound is probably the more heavily utilized direction. Would Safeway be comfortable making this one way? You know, in a perfect world, we'd leave everything two-way, but in response to those concerns that are obviously being raised, we would accept a one-way direction.
Thank you. Let me see if council has any. Mrs. Spector.
Thank you. Again, I just want to give Safeway the opportunity to, discuss issues that they did not have an opportunity to discuss at the Planning Commission meeting. With regard to that alley, let's assume that my personal concern is not the additional or potentially additional Safeway traffic using the alley. It is non-Safeway travel, and aggravated or augmented by the fact that there are more cars going to Safeway. So more people are trying to do a workaround. So that is one concern. Another one is, I know that Safeway has said that that it's going to be more noisy, but I also understand that there's going to be a sound wall. And as far as the speed, again, this is just one person talking, there is a lot of speed there already, which is what gives me a lot of pause on having potentially more traffic in a 17-foot wide travelway. And maybe the mayor is onto something. I don't know. But if there's anything else you can share with me before we go into deliberations, I would appreciate it.
Sure. To your first point about trips in the alley, I believe in the proposed project that there would be substantially less Safeway trips in the alley because our customers would be utilizing the other driveways as the primary. So as far as a concern about additional trips, the ITE numbers, et cetera, I would imagine that trip distribution is going to be at the other driveways, and you'll see a severe reduction or a heavy reduction in Safeway trips in the alley. And then Ken, I don't know if you'd like to join me on the second item.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the landscaping that exists today. It is not, thank you, it is not as easy just to widen it because we would be paving that entire area and removing the vegetation that's there. The one thing we want to do is be able to plant new trees there for the residents. So that is something that we've committed to. And so I think it's not as simple if you go out and look at it and say, why can't you just widen it? Because, we would be taking something away that I think would be a great benefit to the residents years down the road as that landscaping grows and matures. Do you want to add anything else? Because I really appreciate you allowing us to, sort of come back with all of our thoughts on this. I don't know, is there anything else you want to add?
On the question of noise.
Make sure you get close enough to the microphone. Thank you.
The topic of noise, I actually think that the proposed project is going to tremendously decrease it. One of the first questions I posed to the residents behind us in that 2006 meeting was, do you like the site plan like it is? Do you like the building right there? Or in a lot of urban contexts, you're seeing a flip. You're seeing the building up on North Santa Cruz and parking back behind. And they said, no, the building acts as a sound wall. We want to keep it there. We want to keep all of the car traffic up on North Santa Cruz, and then obviously it would be screened within the garage. So with the site plan staying as is, with the extension of the loading dock wall, and with the new masonry wall, I think we're going to see a decrease in overall noise to those neighbors.
One thing I would like to add, if I could, this is two-way traffic now. So if we make this one way in the southerly direction, traffic then would be pushed up and back here, which I think would be fine. I was trying to think through the comment, given it's a little new to me. But I was trying to think through what other things would happen. I think from a traffic standpoint, that would still work. From a loading standpoint, I think it would work here. And of course, 17-foot alley in one direction with a one-way traffic would be more than adequate. But I would prefer to have staff comment on that too, just to get their input.
Okay. Are you done, Mrs. Spector?
Yes, thank you.
You have nothing?
I have plenty, but I am holding my powder on this.
All right. Any further questions of the applicant? Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. Question for Mrs. Matei. I've been involved in several different traffic calming projects. I'm glad to see Mr. Kevin Rohani here. I concur with what Mr. Rodriguez said. everything I've ever heard and learned and been taught is the narrower the roadway, the slower, even if you can make it perceived smaller with median strips or trees overhanging, whatever, the narrower. And so I personally am in favor of the narrower alleyway just for slowing down traffic. I have a bit of a concern with the one-way going south, as Mr. Rodriguez just said. If traffic's coming north and is forced then to turn left, turning left out of your parking lot onto Santa Cruz Avenue to go south is an absolute pain in the rear. Okay? So the fact to be able to continue through that alley, turn left onto Andrews, and use the light, okay, I like that option a whole lot better. What I wanted to confirm with you, because I don't believe I heard from anyone here this evening that said, we being the residents, live on the east behind Safeway. And it seems to me, yes, it seems to me from everything in our meetings with you that the residents behind Safeway are in support of the longer wall. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The vegetation, the soundproofing wall. So the residents most directly affected are in favor of it. I know I'm in favor because of the traffic slowing. Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, it seems to me there's a consensus. I haven't heard a word from anybody living behind there in objection to the extension of the wall.
We had a fairly sizable meeting at Campo de Bachi in 2006 when those neighbors came out, and then they subsequently came out to, or different residents came out to the community meetings, and that was the first commitment I made, was a 6-foot masonry wall and an extension of the loading dock wall, because as I mentioned, noise was the primary concern.
Thank you.
Any further questions of Mr. Brzezinski?
Something we haven't touched on was an issue is community benefit. And we have two numerical calculations regarding that intersection light upgrade at Andrews and North Santa Cruz. One is your own estimate of $128,000, and you describe that specifically in your reports, and how that broke out. And then we have a staff estimate of $40,000. So I would assume somewhere that number will fall in the middle. Is it still the intent of your application that if the price of the upgrade were as high as $128,000, that would still be the Safeway commitment at this point?
We looked at what other projects have done recently and other ideas for the community benefit. And once we had the cost estimate done on the signal upgrade, we thought that that was a very fair and comparable offer by Safeway. If, as staff is showing, the number were to come in at $40,000, I think that that's really low. I'd love to get that contractor on the whole job if that is going to be the price. I think we're prepared to step up to what our original offer was, whether it's on the signal or if it's on a combination of other projects in town, other community projects, as long as the overall commitment by Safeway is in our original range.
All right, and then I want to confirm what I believe I heard you say earlier in that, and it was a response to Mr. Harmon's question about the extended pocket lane, southbound North Santa Cruz onto eastbound Andrews. You are willing to let the experience of the actual traffic determine whether or not that would be necessary. And if I understand this correctly, and prior to any actual change in that queue and the pocket for the queue, that there would be negotiation with those businesses that front that intersection. Is that correct?
Correct. I would suggest, I think maybe a year or two would be a good amount of time to pass, and then have Safeway and interested merchants fronting the parking stalls that would otherwise be eliminated. Maybe at that point, along with town staff, we have an update meeting and determine if the change needs to be made.
I would like to point out that the continuing southbound traffic can move into a two-way left turn lane in front of the Safeway property, so that you wouldn't, if you want to come into the front of the property, you wouldn't necessarily have to turn on Andrews. You also have an alternative to move down and into the two-way lane to make your left turn in. My impression is the traffic pretty much makes adjustments for circumstance, that people move into alternative lanes if the one that they're moving towards backs up 2 or 3 cars. And I think that's one of the issues that probably should address as we look at the traffic concerns, is that that people don't tend to move exactly the way the traffic engineers propose that people move. The next question relates to a couple of pathways that were indicated for pedestrian travel both at the surface lot and in the underground. The offset is the reduction of a parking space or 2. And I think that there is no intention, certainly there's no intention on your part, no intention on our part, to reduce the amount of traffic, to reduce the amount of parking on the property itself. So it's a trade-off of competing values here.
Correct.
My own experience is that people tend to go from point A to point B in the path of least resistance. And so if my vehicle is parked lateral to the pathway proposed in the underground, or even at the surface grade, that I would tend to take the diagonal right to my car. If you look at Lenardi's parking lot, if you look at Nob Hill, there are no designated pathways. People tend to just go to where the car is parked. That's how we operate as human beings. We don't get in a nice, neat line and move according to the directions that we may have on a plot of ground. So has that issue been addressed in terms of what actual circulation would take place underground, and are there offsets that would say it really isn't necessary to extend that path, because you're only going from the end of the handicap path to the next set of parked cars? Have you looked at the circulation to see if there's any issue that's significant that would really demand that you maintain a path? I know it's recommended by our architect as a safety precaution. I guess my question is, if it was a safety precaution, then how does that actually accomplish a safe passage if that's the intent?
Put the underground lot on. It was on there just a moment ago.
Yeah.
One forward. You're exactly right, especially with kids in tow or our elderly customers. They're going to want to get as close as possible to the elevators and staircase, which are right here. In reality, what these parking stalls are most likely going to become it's probably going to be employee parking. I know that the town does not allow specific designated parking, but in practice, we're going to want to put our customers first and our employees furthest away. So, will there be a lot of shopping carts in this area? Probably during the high point of the holidays, when we really encourage getting our employees to the absolute far ends. I do appreciate Larry Cannon, the town architect's comments. As I mentioned, the big challenge is it's less about the width of the aisles, which have been designed with safety and customer convenience in mind. It's really those columns. There are 4 columns, which you cannot see on the PowerPoint slide here, but on the actual drawings you can see where they are. So that's kind of what's handcuffing us. As I mentioned, if we go to the 3-foot pathway and we lose the stall, we can make it work if we make up kind of a makeup stall over here, which is really the only location, the only real estate that we have in the garage to do it. We can make it work. It is trade-offs, though, but we defer to council. Just one moment, I'm sorry. Let me have Ken add something here.
There was a comment from staff about the possibility of adding a second path. As Natalie mentioned, if you come up the stair or the elevators from the underground parking, this is the only location you can be in because of the 2 elevators and then also the stairwell. So you would come out, get onto the public right-of-way, the sidewalk, come down North Santa Cruz, and visit shops on either side of the street. I think by adding a second pathway here, I don't really see what that's going to benefit, other than there would be a few customers that might park at this surface that might also walk here, but I think that's why we're encouraging them at the main entry to come right in the front door. And I think that's a logical spot to do that.
Other questions of the applicant? Mr. Larson.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, did want to comment on the left turn pocket. Staff is working on a condition should the council want to pursue that, where the applicant would post a bond at the time of the building permit issuance for that future improvement if it's needed, roughly a year, maybe a year and a half after the opening of the new Safeway. Staff would do an assessment of the need for that left turn lane pocket. It would be based on safety factors, not simply Safeway or neighboring businesses' preferences, but they would be involved in that safety assessment.
Thank you for that information. Council, I'm going to close the public hearing unless you have any additional questions of the applicant. Seeing none, thank you very much, and I will close the public hearing. And I wanted to ask council if anyone needs a short break before we go into deliberations. We're all okay? What?
Wouldn't you like to do that? No, I'm just kidding.
Apparently not. Okay, so we have a lot to discuss. We have a lot of motions before us. We have a lot of options before us. And I will look to whoever would like to speak first as to whether you want to make general comments, ask additional questions of staff, start working through these one at a time, or your pleasure as to how you'd like to proceed. Mr. Rice.
I'll start with a question. I'm intrigued, Madam Mayor, with your one-way idea for the alley. My question of staff is that something that needs to be decided now, or can we, if this were approved, can we see how traffic circulation works, and if, because that's a public alleyway, is it not? I mean, it's ours. So could we decide later to do that or not?
I think if you want to reserve that option, that would be an appropriate motion. In other words, the town would reserve the option to require the alley be one way or two ways. So that would be put in as a condition if that's what the council decided. And then the applicant would have to accept that or not accept that.
Thank you.
Could we clarify the ownership of that strip of land there?
Safeway Incorporated owns the property, but the town does maintain ingress-egress rights to that area.
And I'll just comment right now as we get started on this that I really have trouble defining that as an alley. It turns out we have no actual clear definition of what an alley is. But I don't, I mean, if you compare it to the other alleys, it does not start and stop at two streets. It's an entrance to a private parking lot and a civic parking lot. So to me, it's a little bit different conversation. I don't want us to get off track and start talking about alleys in general and everything, but just to let you know how I'm thinking of this in a little bit different perspective. Anybody?
Sure.
Vice Mayor.
You know, I think that's what makes this job so interesting is that it's always a question of competing values. No one tonight has spoken about anything that didn't have a single base, and that is the value to the community. Whether you're in opposition or in support, I think that we're looking at things on both sides that are really significant to us. We want to protect our downtown small businesses for sure. And when we were discussing earlier the impacts of a larger Safeway, Mr. Shepard, offered an opportunity for us to look at the question of whether there's going to be a significant deleterious effect on the rest of the businesses in the downtown. My own opinion of that is I can't see that as the logical conclusion. I think that we have a very competitive downtown, and as a matter of fact, the more synergy we get by the competition of businesses, the more we thrive. In addition, I think that the question of the expansion of Safeway and its basic direction towards a greater number of services and goods available will actually enhance the quality of life of that northern neighborhood. Now, is it necessary to have the square footage of a building to accomplish those goods and services? I don't think there's anything absolutely necessary. I think what we're talking about here is there an opportunity? And if offered an opportunity for a greater degree of goods and services, then how is that not valuable? Now, the offset is if the greater square footage actually does produce a much more significant traffic impact, then that becomes the question that we need to address. And I, for one, having been on the council for, I'm in my 12th year now, we always come to this point in our discussion where traffic counts based on a certain traffic engineer calculus, they don't seem to have the effect that they're projected to have. And I think it really depends on use. I remember a discussion about a small housing tract that was being developed near University Fire Station, and that particular group of single-family residences had been seen as the actual death of University Highway 9 as we know it. And no one was going to be able to get out onto Highway 9 from University because the queue would be so great of the entrance and egress from that particular housing development that we would stop all fire service because we couldn't get past the fire rigs could not get out of the station. There would be no ability of a particular business to sustain his business at the corner of 9 and University. And amazingly, when it was finally put in place, the impacts didn't occur. Apparently, people don't all come out at the same time, queue up, and block the roads. And I think that has been our common experience as we've looked at each one of these reports. So to the question of traffic impacts, my impression is that although there may be more trips, I think that there may be a reduction of trips elsewhere. So you're going to have fewer people crossing Highway 9 to the boulevard, fewer people going up Blossom Hill to the boulevard and down towards Los Gatos San Miguel. It's the possibility that you'll retain the trips within the neighborhood. And the common theme I've heard from those who have been positive about this, the common theme is we want a better Safeway. We want a better delivery of service. And I think that if you look at that value and look at the potential offsets that may occur if there's more traffic, then I think that we have a real good discussion possible and a real good orientation towards approving this project. Now, I remind everyone that the Planning Commission gave this to us as a recommendation to approve. That was the 5-1 vote. The 3-3 vote, the split vote, according to the rules, that fails for lack of having a majority. And so we're looking at a recommendation to approve with the questions that we're answering tonight, particularly about the width of that driveway, in effect, behind the building. I did my own little research out in the neighborhoods, looking at alleys in town, and there is no standard. There may be a number on a particular fire code, but the fire department has already said they'll sign off on this. What I found is that if you continue northbound, the width of industrial behind Campo de Bocce is about 17 feet. If you look at the rolled curb as part of the footage. Now, if you go north of that, beyond Roberts, it widens up to a full street, 2 lanes passing, parking on both sides. I don't think really that it makes a lot of sense for us to consider this alley as the appropriate passage to gain us another through street in the downtown, from Highway 9 to Andrews. And if we widen that, then I think all we would do is encourage that kind of through traffic. I think Andrews would be much more impacted than if people knew they could come off of 9 if it's backed up, run on down Andrews, turn left and hit North Santa Cruz and miss all of 9 in North Santa Cruz. Much more impact if that were the mechanism. I think we have to be careful of what we wish for because there can be unintended consequences. I drive slowly through there for a couple of reasons. One is it's narrow, and the other is there's a speed bump. There is a speed bump there. I don't see really fast traffic going through there, even though it's been reported that it is. I don't see it. I think that what happens is typically people do, because it's narrow, slow down to go through there. I'm interested in this one-way traffic issue, and some future investigation of that is a possibility, but in the context of if we see traffic demands, that are starting to impact us. So for my purposes, I would be more than willing to start the ball rolling on the various motions, and then we can add our pieces as we go along if that's acceptable to the mayor.
That's entirely up to you. While you still have a microphone, if you want to make a motion, then we'll see if anybody wants to second it and move along.
All right, then that's what we'll do.
Okay.
I want to make a motion that we have been able to establish the mitigated negative deck, which is attachment 1 of our packet.
Second.
Any discussion of that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay, I would then move to adopt the mitigation monitoring plan, which is Exhibit 4 of Attachment 2 of the staff report.
Second that.
Any other comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Now, I believe this is the place in which we can start to put supplemental issues in.
And just, if I might just clarify it with staff. So what we are looking at now in our list of items is where we need to address all of those items that staff has spelled out that were Planning Commission recommendation questions or anything else that's come up this evening to modify. Is that correct?
Okay, so I think that at this point, I think we can make the required findings for the zone change. And that's Exhibit 2 of Attachment 2. And those findings are as follows. Required finding for CEQA that there's no significant impacts that have been identified, and the mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the proposed project. And I believe as I read through those, the neg deck, that there were no significant issues that couldn't be mitigated. Okay? That we are required to be consistent with the town's general plan, and that the proposed zone change is consistent with the general plan and its elements, and that the plan development overlay allows commercial use in this property zoning. We're required also to find consistency with the town's commercial design guidelines. I think that the proposed zone change is consistent with the commercial design guidelines in that it meets the intent of the guidelines and subject to the planned development ordinance. And the next required finding is for the redevelopment plan for the Central Los Gatos redevelopment project area, that the proposed project is consistent with the redevelopment plan for the Central Los Gatos redevelopment project area. That's Section 4B, in that the area is designated as commercial in the Central Los Gatos redevelopment plan, and the use is consistent with commercial uses set forth in the plan. The next is a requirement by traffic impact policy. Now, this is an important piece. The project that generates additional traffic of 5 or more peak hour trips may only be recommended for approval if the project benefits to the community override the traffic impacts. And I think that we're going to have to talk about community benefit in just a little bit. Since there are more proposed trips than 5, it's the burden of the applicant to cite the benefits, to the town and the specific general plan and any applicable specific plan, the deciding body must make specific findings that demonstrate such, okay? And that these benefits outweigh the impacts of the project. I think we can make that. I think it's fair to note that it is important that we focus on community benefit as we continue our discussion, because this is an area that could indeed make this project much more agreeable and palatable to the north side community if we do that right. And I believe that is the extent of the findings necessary for the zone change.
May I ask the attorney, I don't have the findings indicated as a separate motion, but as part of the motion to approve the application. So was that all just a prelude to the motion that he's going to continue to make about the application? Or do we do a separate motion just on accepting the findings?
You could, Mayor, members of the council, the first bullet under B could be acted either separately or in total as the council prefers, and then you could provide direction for specific changes to the conditions that staff has been working on based on your comment as you deal with alley, community benefit, left turn lane, whatever.
I'm thinking that if it's permissible, if we could have a motion that makes those required findings and then get that out of the way, because the next part is where it's going to get complicated, I think, if that works. If that's okay with you.
Well, there is one finding. If you're going to pursue the deferring of, we've drafted a condition for deferring the left turn pocket extension and the preserving your opportunity on the direction of the alley. You can either make that finding as part of your motion on those individual items, or you can incorporate it now, but I don't know if the council knows where they're going on those issues.
Madam Mayor, my recommendation would be that we wait until we've had that discussion, okay? Because I don't think we are ready to go with that as yet. And my preference would be if we could fold the findings then into the motion itself rather than find separately.
Okay, so that was a prelude, so keep going.
Okay. So
you've not yet made your motion?
No, we're not.
Okay.
And to move that we approve the application subject to the performance standards included in the Plan Development Ordinance, which is Exhibit 17 of Attachment 2, and the performance standards recommended by the Planning Commission, which is discussion in Section B, which we've already focused on previously. So my question is this, that at this point, that would be my motion, and I think that this is the time for us to amend or enhance those particular parts of this that need to be addressed.
Is there a second? And then I want to clarify something.
I'll second to get it in there, but I've got a whole bunch of clarifications myself, so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And the clarification I'm most concerned with is the performance standards recommended by the Planning Commission consumes pages 3 to 8 of the staff report. And so we probably would need to go through those one by one to see how many we want to actually keep in and how many we want to take out or modify, and those would be amendments to your motion.
Correct. I'm willing to start that motion's continuance through those items.
Okay, so we'll keep that as the base motion, if that's all right with council, and now we'll be starting looking at any modifications to that motion on those items. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. The first is the input regarding the width of the driveway, the 26-foot recommendation. And there we were offered 4 different alternatives by staff if we wanted to change the recommendation that was offered us by the applicant.
Actually, excuse me, Vice Mayor, yes. You could almost say there was a 5th, because staff's recommendation is to leave it as it is at 17.
Right. But the 4 were alternatives that were supplemental to the Planning Commission meeting. If you notice on page 5 at the top, of the staff report. This is where the staff offers us the opportunity that the proposed 17-foot alleyway meets the intent of the plan development application, and the staff finds the proposal with acceptable. It's noted also that the fire department has signed up that it would be acceptable as well. There is language wherein we could alter what is in what is currently in the item that we're attempting to address, and it talks about the driveway width shall be a minimum of 17 feet. There is a parentheses that indicates that we could alter that if we so chose, and for the motion's purposes, I would like to leave that language intact at 17 feet. Okay.
It's agreeable with the second.
Okay. Council, do you want to discuss each one of these if you disagree at this point? Because when we get around to the motion, it's going to be just yes or no on the motion with all of the modifications. So I'd actually like to encourage you that if you disagree with any of these, that you say so now or discuss it. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. I appreciate your invitation to do that, and I think if we can just leave it the way it is, if we have an objection, we'll raise. Otherwise, I would suggest no comment is a consensus.
Thank you. Mrs. Spector?
You were talking to me. I could just hear you.
I was talking to you.
This is a very interesting issue, and maybe exploring one way would be a way to go. But the alleyway or the driveway or whatever you want to call it, that passageway behind Safeway, when I came in here this evening, I anticipated, based on all the volumes of information I had and listening to the Planning Commission testimony, that I would not be able to support any motion unless it widened that passageway behind Safeway. I am not sure at this point, and I'm going to have about 7 more motions before I have to come to a conclusion. I am not sure at this point, one, because possibly we will consider one way. Secondly, because we have had evidence that having a narrower passageway keeps the speed down, although I have to say my personal experience is it may be keeping the speed down, but when they come around any edge, they're going very fast. So I am not sure. I'm hopeful that we will be able to allow staff to explore the one-way in the back of Safeway. So I am not certainly if I'm going to be supporting the motion. So at this point, I'm just keeping my options open.
Thank you. And I just want to comment. I'm back to, again, this whole idea of why we even think about it as an alleyway. And Mr. Przinski was talking about his out measuring the streets in the vicinity. And what he said is, as soon as you cross Andrews, you're on Industrial Way. It has a name. It's a whole different animal than through this parking lot. If you look at the map of Los Gatos that shows the streets, and it shows Victory Lane, it shows Industrial Way, when it gets to Andrews, there's a line, and then there's a big square, because that's a big square of private property leading into a public parking lot. So I'm back to, I don't see this as an alleyway that we should think of it as an alleyway encouraging traffic back and forth, but as a driveway entrance. And I would be happy leaving it as it is, as two-way, with the direction to staff that we really monitor that. It's going to be another year and a half before the store opens, year and a half, give or take, or 2 years, somewhere along there. And there'll be other changes going on in the area, but we can always make that section one way if it looks like it's warranted. But I'm okay with the way that current motion stands. So if we have no other comments on that, we can go on to number 2. I'm sorry, Mr. Rice.
I think I heard the attorney say that we need to specify that we want to hold that option open. Is that correct for the one-way? Or can we just approve it as the motion maker made it and I seconded it?
Well, CDD and I have drawn up a condition that basically preserves that option by way of an agreement, incorporates that issue, because it's both dealing with traffic circulation, incorporates that issue along with the left turn length, which I'll read into the record once you decide both issues.
So Mayor, staff would interpret it that there is no amendment to change that first condition as specified, and we'll address the traffic one when we're through these.
Understood. Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
Back to motion maker regarding item number 2.
Remember, we're just going through the planning commission issues, and then we can address those issues that have subsequently surfaced. Number 2 is the designation of the end of the parking garage for employee parking. My understanding is that we can't make that designation, or that we can't, as the town, demand that that be reserved parking for a particular class. But that Safeway certainly can make whatever accommodations it needs to make for its employees. And so that's one issue. The other issue, however, is the question of the pedestrian pathway. And in our discussion, again, the conflict of values, reduction of a parking space or two versus a designation on the asphalt to move from the second parking row to the third. The motion maker feels that it's unnecessary, and certainly it's not worth the trade-off of 1 or 2 parking spaces. So I'm going to, that's my response to the Planning Commission's issue relative to the pathway.
So that would be to omit number 2 from that list.
That's correct.
Seconder.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Opportunity for council comment regarding that. Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you. I'm okay with that as well, and I want to expand upon what Mr. Vice Mayor Brzezinski said earlier, and that was the path of least resistance. And I think when people, we don't have it up on the map there, but when people come out and you get into the parking lot, you'll walk a certain way, and then if your car's over there, you're not going to walk there and go a 90-degree and walk behind cars that are backing up. You're going to walk to your car, and that's what happens. It's like if you put a piece of lawn here, people are going to not necessarily take the cobblestones, the stepstones. They're going to go whichever direction it is. So I like the layout the way it is. I also like the fact that the spaces between the parking lots are larger than what code requires, and as a result, the parking spaces are larger than what code requires, and I understand you get in fewer spaces because of that, and that's wonderful because when you open up your doors and put your grocery in, okay, you don't like people nicking into your car or you nicking into their car. So I think that's great. And so, Mr. Brzezinski, what you said was number 2 is out because, as our town attorney told us, we cannot designate it anyway, and they do not have the right to designate it either.
Well, we don't have the right to designate it.
But they don't either, correct, Mr. Attorney, through the mayor?
I would believe they can make recommendations to their staff to.
I mean, they can't paint it green and say employee only.
Right, but they can encourage employees. That's what the staff
Understood.
says.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other council comments regarding eliminating number 2 from the list? Okay, number 3.
Let's go on to 3, which is community benefit. And I think that the Safeway Corporation proposed the dialogue with the school districts regarding e-script, and I think that's appropriate, and I think that was reinforced by the Planning Commission as well. So the question is the upgrade of the traffic signal, and for my purposes, I think that's an appropriate, that's definitely an appropriate community benefit. I would say that there may be a range that we look at here, and the range as offered is up to $128,000. And you know, from the point of view of our engineering staff, the evaluation of perhaps $40,000 on the lowball figure, it may be somewhere in between. My expectation is that the offer is up to $28,000 for the mitigation, and I think that would be something that we could accept, but we should direct it towards what the costs are to do that mitigation. Yes.
Mr. Larson?
Based on prior council discussion as well as prior comparable actions on other cases, Planner Savage has come up with some language to go in the community benefit paragraph on page 6 for your consideration.
And may we hear it now?
Yes. So the performance standard would remain as shown on page 6 up to the words schools and nonprofit organizations, and then would continue to say, and a contribution of $128,000 for the full upgrade of the traffic signals at the intersection of North Santa Cruz Avenue and Andrews Street. Any community benefit contribution for traffic signal upgrades shall not be, any community benefit contribution for traffic signal upgrades not used shall be designated to other community benefit improvements deemed appropriate by Town Council.
And a question before I take it back to the motion maker and so on. Is this where we would work in our concern about not implementing a left turn lane until that's going to be later?
That'll be later.
Okay. Forget that.
We're still working on those, planning commissioner.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may explain, the cost for the left turn upgrade is not included in that 128.
Okay,
That will be a separate bonded action.
Thank you. So that's not considered. Okay. Motion maker, are you happy with the language?
Yes, I'm satisfied with that.
As well.
Okay. Council comments on e-script and/or community benefit? We're okay? All right.
All right, moving on then, the recommendation is provide bike racks. I think we're all in agreement with that. And the language is as contained at the bottom of page 6. Okay, so we all there?
Seconder?
Fine. Yes, thank you.
Council comment? None? Great. Move on.
The fifth is this breaking up the bioswale in front of the neighboring merchants to allow pedestrian access. I'm not convinced that that is necessary or appropriate. I think it's the same argument. I do believe that there's access to those businesses from both North Santa Cruz and from the rear parking lot. Going out there just yesterday, there are, 16, 17 parking spots behind you folks' place there, and a sidewalk that runs into that. So I would assume that the bulk of parking could take place back there, and then people would access from the parking lot. But if someone were to leave Safeway, the proposed pathway from the front entrance to North Santa Cruz would be adequate to accomplish that. Now, I may be missing something here, but my attitude is that therefore the additional pedestrian pathway actually complicates the traffic movements and doesn't allow us the benefit that those movements give us versus the pathway that exists from the front entrance to the sidewalk.
So bottom line is you want to eliminate number 5?
That's correct.
Agreed.
Council comment? Seeing none, move on to number 6.
Number 6 is the 6-inch versus 4-inch curb. The staff recommends, or the staff has indicated that a 6-inch height is acceptable. For those of us who have low-riding cars, we have to be a little bit more careful when we come up to the curb. But I think that the standard of 6 inches is the one that works best for the landscaping and the bioswale. So I would say keep that as recommended.
Seconder agrees.
And Mrs. Spector.
Clarification question to staff. The proposed condition says the curb height may be 6 inches. Are you using may because you want to maintain discretion in the PD, or do you want it to be 6 inches?
The applicant has requested a 6-inch curb height. The term may is in there in case they're able to go down to the 4-inch curb height, should they want to do that in the future. It doesn't have to be 6 inches because the town code does allow 4 inches.
Okay.
Further council comment? All right, moving on to number 7.
Number 7 is the replacement of Exhibit C of Exhibit 17 with the draft plan development ordinance that modifies the truck route. And I believe that that modification has been presented us, and I think that's appropriate to accept.
Agree.
Council comment? Okay, and then number 8, tree fencing.
Okay, tree fencing. I think our arborist thoroughly vetted the whole question of the trees and the tree protection. I think the only issue was the tree protection. We were not discussing the question of the removals at that point, given the fact we had a thorough analysis by the arborist regarding that. Now, the question of one last piece, that all commissioners' reasoning be specifically included, how do we accomplish that in contrast to what we've done already?
You could refer back to the first motion you made in terms of accepting the verbatim minutes as the Planning Commission report.
So I will do that. We will refer back to the original motion prior to the public hearing initiation that accepts the minutes of the Planning Commission. Okay.
So, Vice Mayor Krasinski, are you in favor of the tree fencing?
Yes.
Okay.
Seconder agrees.
And council comment? All right, so we've gotten through that, so now we're on to additional
Extra stuff,
performance standards.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one I'll address is the recommendation regarding the southbound North Santa Cruz to eastbound Andrews pocket left turn lane. And I'd like to reference back to the attorney and the language that might be proposed, if you would not mind doing that again.
And this is on the putting that off potentially for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it would help to explain what's in this condition first, because what the condition envisions is prior to building permit, the applicant would enter into an agreement acceptable to the city attorney or town attorney and the CDD director, ensuring performance of a study 18 months after final occupancy. So after the store is up and running for 18 months, they would retain at their expense a traffic consultant to acceptable to the city engineer to evaluate the project circulation, which would include the back alley and the left-hand turn pocket. And the city engineer would make a decision, and that decision, in your wisdom, would be appealable to you or to the Planning Commission and you. So if you want, I'll read that condition.
Please.
Prior to the issuance of the building permit, applicant shall enter an agreement with town and post appropriate security requiring the applicant immediately following 18 months after final occupancy to retain a traffic consultant approved by the city engineer to evaluate project circulation, including whether the left turn lane needs to be extended and whether the alley circulation should be restricted to one-way traffic southbound only. Said agreement shall ensure the installation of any changes as determined necessary by the town engineer. Said agreement shall be approved by the director of CDD and the town attorney.
And that language is acceptable to the maker of the motion.
And to the seconder as well.
Mr. Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the town attorney.
Yes.
Mr. Martello, in what you just read, it addressed both the left turn lane and the Safeway strip, but I don't know what you want to call that back piece of land back there.
I like Mrs. Spector's passageway.
Mrs. Spector's passageway, okay. Safeway alley, and whatever. As far as, bless you, as far as the left turn lane, I certainly like them paying the cost. I certainly think 18 months out gives us an idea of how it's all working. But from my standpoint, regardless of what the traffic report says, if our staff or our PD or our whomever says this is a pain in the rear, I'd like to have it changed, regardless of what the traffic report says. So I don't know quite how to throw that out for consideration to the motion maker. I understand the traffic report is given, and we receive it, and then we can evaluate it as we wish. There is no binding, Mr. Martello, there's nothing that binds us
Well, it actually, the way the conditions word is, it's as determined necessary by the city engineer.
Okay.
Meaning that the traffic engineer could say it's not really needed, but the city engineer gets to make the final call. Everything's appealable to you, in theory.
So even if the traffic engineer says it's not necessary, if the town engineer says it is, then it is.
That's the intention.
Okay, and also in your same wording, if I may continue, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. In your same wording, you address the back alley. I, too, am interested in what we do with the back alley, and in my mind, as we're designing from the dais here and what we're doing, I'm thinking about speed bumps, I'm thinking about whatever. So whatever we decide to do down the road, one-way speed bumps or whatever, again, would be at the discretion of the town engineer. Is that your understanding of what you read?
That certainly will be now that if the council adopts that.
Okay.
Because we'll expand it, and I think the applicant can hear that. So what we will do is we'll polish this condition a little bit, give this final wording to the applicant, incorporating all of your thoughts, and they will either accept it or we'll be back talking to you.
Thank you. I just don't want a 250-foot, 17-foot strip to be used for people cutting through too easily. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff regarding that item? Maker of the motion, do you have additional performance standards to add?
At this point, I don't believe I do.
So that concludes your motion?
That would conclude my motion, but I would recognize a friendly amendment from my peers on council.
One may be coming. Mrs. Spector.
I believe that we were also supposed to include in the PD the Hatfield 11-point agreement with Safeway. And I don't know if you have the wording there, and if you're good to go with it.
Maker of the motion, is that something you would like to add?
Absolutely. I think it's now up to 15, isn't it, rather than 11?
And
15? Yeah. So do we have the 15?
do we need to hear the 15 is the question?
I don't think so.
Oh, we're not in the packet, 11 were, correct?
I think they've been read into the record, though.
7 were included in attachment 5
Correct.
of the town council report. There were 4 additional ones in the Hatfield 11-point agreement, and then there were 4 additionals verbally given to us today.
All right. So the 4 additional, would you please repeat those?
Yes. So the first one being to look at capturing the ventilation with the neighbors to the south, soundproofing the storefront and the side wall, participation in the grand opening advertising with Safeway in the south neighbors, and 4, no construction worker parking in the off-street town parking lot.
Okay, so that gives us our sum total. And I would recommend that we agree to that.
Seconder agrees.
Council comment?
Just one more thing for the record. On the left turn pocket length of same. Since that was a mitigation measure identified in both the traffic report and the mitigated negative deck, I think the council's made the findings why you don't feel that's necessary now, but I just want to make the record clear that your findings were really based around the fact that this may not generate the number of trips that the IT standards say, and it may be that people go there and buy more. So that was the finding that you did incorporate, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
Open to any
motion
others?
maker, are you complete?
I am complete.
Okay. This is the opportunity then for council to say anything else that they want to say regarding the motion before we have the final vote. Seeing none, well, I'm supposed to repeat it all back to you, but I'm not going to do that. So we have a complicated and complex motion before us. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And it passes unanimously. We are complete, and I would ask, I'm sorry, we have more?
Oh, yes.
Do you want to move to waive the readings?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes, did you?
I think the mayor should do it.
I'll move to waive the reading of the zone change ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. And would the clerk like to read the title of the zone change ordinance?
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending the town code affecting a zone change from C1 to C1 PD for property at 470 North Santa Cruz Avenue, APN number 529-07083.
And I'll move to introduce the ordinance to effectuate the zone change.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now am I complete? Nope.
Direct the clerk to publish.
One more.
Oh, had to turn it over. I can't see it down there. And we will direct the clerk administrator to publish the ordinance. Now I'm complete? Thank you. That does complete that agenda item, but I would ask the audience to stay for just one moment because over the holiday season, we did receive the very sad news that Jim Detlefsen, our KCAT chief engineer, who's been the engineer for broadcasting council meetings and planning commission meetings, did pass away. And so we will be adjourning tonight in his honor. Thank you.